The young man woke up in a place he did not recognize, lying on the grass and looking around, and for a while he hesitated to get up because he didn't know how he had ended up in the forest. Unfamiliar plants grew everywhere, the kind the young man had never seen before. Getting to his feet, the young man clutched his head to ease the pain. Standing up, the young man realized he was in a very different world from the one he had known, and he looked around while trying not to remember how he had ended up there because the memory of his death was painful. Unsure what to do or where to go, he was thinking about his next move when a bear appeared behind him. The animal made loud noises to scare its prey, and the young man froze, trembling with fear and confusion, not knowing what to do because he hadn't expected trouble so soon after waking. Thinking quickly, the young man weighed his options to save himself: play dead, run away, or fight, and fighting seemed the most reckless. As the bear moved closer, the young man grew more panicked and, having no better idea, simply greeted the monster. The animal did not stop attacking, as the young man expected, and grew even more aggressive, so he had chosen the wrong way to fight. As the bear prepared to attack, slime surrounded it and completely blocked its movements. The young man had not expected this. Slime covered the creature like water, trapping the bear as it struggled, and the young man didn't know what to do because the bear wasn't dangerous anymore, but he wasn't sure how long that would last. Gradually, the bear dissolved into the slime as if it were acid, and eventually the monster showed no signs of life. The young man realized he could not handle the sight, and when he approached the tree, he vomited. The young man realized that even with the bear gone, the slime could still attack him, and after a moment, he felt them trying to attack him. Unexpectedly, the shelter he had hidden behind collapsed, and when he turned to see what happened, he realized the slime was already very close. The substance did not attack the young man. It stopped where the bear had been. He forced himself to calm down to plan his next move, since the slime had swallowed the bear and he needed to be very careful. No longer acting recklessly, the young man realized when a bear appeared before him that he needed to understand this world, and the slug encounter was not the worst thing that happened to him. To protect himself a bit, the man grabbed a branch that looked like a wooden sword to smash spider nests. Walking through the forest, the young man saw people and assumed they were civilians, but they were actually savages carrying human flesh. Frightened, he crawled carefully behind the bushes to avoid being seen, because the robbers might attack. Eventually, he found a real road and cried with joy, carving a lasting inscription on a tree to mark the start of his journey. Still, what had happened bothered him because everything felt strange and unfamiliar. After wandering through the forest for a long time, he reached a castle that seemed plain compared to those he had read about in fantasy stories. Approaching the castle gate, the young man shouted a greeting to the guards at the entrance, but the men in armor spoke a different language and did not understand him, so they grabbed and arrested him. His eagerness to meet people landed him behind bars because the guards did not know what else to do with an unknown person. The young man did not want this to happen, shouting to the men that he only wanted protection from monsters, but he could not understand a single word when the guards answered. Resigned to his situation, the man lay on the hay near the grate, thought about what had happened to him, and fell asleep. Fearful of what might happen next, he had already, in a short time, been attacked by a bear that was later eaten by a slug, met bandits, and ended up in prison. A blow woke the young man. When he opened his eyes, he saw a girl in armor standing over him. The blonde was talking with the guards, then she turned to him and pointed. Smiling in her armor, the girl made the guy think she understood him and would smile back, so he waved. Clearly not welcoming the stranger's behavior, she struck the young man again, making him double over and stay down. Strong and capable, the girl put the young man back into a bag and dragged him away after he passed out again, and when he woke he realized he was being carried to a building. After a while he felt someone untying the bag and tried to get out. When he peered out, two women stood before him, one the armored girl who had brought him to this unfamiliar place. The blonde girl turned to another woman named Maya and said the young man had already woken up and freed himself from the bag at the same time. Hearing the conversation, the young man wanted to insult the girl for treating him like that, but he stopped when he realized he was starting to understand a foreign language. The girl with short hair asked the guy to stay calm because they were in the church, and the lady said a spell had been used on the young man, allowing him to understand and speak a foreign language. The young man noticed that the spell reminded him of a chewing gum translator, but when the girl in the dress asked what he meant, he changed the subject. As he stood, the man complained that the girl in knight's armor had been too hard on him, and the short-haired girl looked reproachfully at her friend Ilias. The young man also said he had many questions and things he didn't understand, but he didn't expect the girls to believe him when he told his story. The girl from the church told the stranger she could spot lies, so if he was honest, she would believe him. Glad to have met her, the young man even asked to hug the lady, who was flattered, while the armored girl nearby urged him to hurry with the story. Believing life would be easier if he could spot lies, the young man told me he came from another world and then told the girls his name, which made them both blush slightly. When the young man finished, the church girl confirmed his story was true, and the armored girl said it was hard to believe. Later, the young man said a bear and a slug attacked him and tried to eat him, so he feared he would die, and the girl in the dress cut him off and grabbed his shoulders. She asked if the young man had really escaped Black Demon Killer Mountain, since he had not known the place had such a strange name, adding that it was too dangerous even for dragons, let alone humans. After learning about the dragons, the young man decided he wanted to see them with his own eyes someday. The girl added that the bear the young man had seen ate a fruit that makes you unknowingly head to the slug's lair. When the armored girl said the young man had brought these fruits with him, he replied that he had to eat several because he was hungry. The girl in the dress also said he had very little mana, so the fruit's control barely affected him. Later, he thought about his mana because he felt no surge of power, yet figured an unremarkable guy like him should have outstanding abilities, as often happens in these stories. The girl in the dress said it was impossible for the young man to have any power, since such a low amount of mana would not allow it. He wondered why he had nothing after being reborn in another world. In the new world, the young man realized he was no more dangerous than a beetle that could be crushed underfoot, and aside from a stick, he had nothing to defend himself. Instead, the young man felt relieved, because not having any abilities meant he would be safe. Ilias looked at the young man and said she was surprised he had reached the city without any equipment, but he reminded her he had used a stick. Smiling, the armored girl said she hadn't known it was his weapon and had used it for firewood, leaving the young man upset because he had nothing left. Ilias said the man should be grateful to be alive, since bandits often appear on the mountain and spare no one. The young man replied that he had in fact seen the one described that night. Ilias paused and asked whether she had understood the man correctly. The young man replied that while looking for shelter for himself, he had seen several gloomy people who looked like bandits. The blonde grabbed the man by the collar and shook him, demanding to know exactly where he had seen the criminals. The young man asked her to stop because he could hardly speak, but Ilias would not calm down. To snap the girl out of it, the woman from the church shouted at her, and then the knight dropped the guy and quickly apologized to him. Ilias's use of her power left the young man upset and angry, since it could have killed him. The girl in the dress also doubted he could find the exact place where he had seen the bandits. He said he could because he remembered carving an inscription on a nearby tree, and the church girl wanted to hug him, so he asked her to be gentler. Ilias did not want to just stand and watch the couple because she had to assemble a squad immediately to go to the mountains. The armored girl said the young man would go with her to show the right place, and he was not very happy about that. The blonde girl turned and introduced herself fully, saying her name was Ilias Ratzel, a knight of the kingdom of Thys sent to capture the mountain bandits, and the young man had been right that they were near the cave entrance and inside the cave. Two men stood at the entrance to their lair when one began to leave. The dark-haired man asked where his partner had gone, and his friend replied that he needed to relieve himself. Left alone, the bandit wished he wasn't stuck guarding the cave, and was instead facing a beautiful woman with a good figure. A man nibbled on a snack and kept saying he was tired of seeing women selling goods at the market beside him, but a nearby band interrupted his monologue. Moments later, a spear struck the bandit's head, and he had no time to react, falling dead. Ilias jumped out of hiding and landed a clean hit on a criminal's head. Another knight grabbed the second man and told him the bandit had used detection magic, which would make the other criminals realize they had been discovered. The young man was surprised the bandits had magic too, but Ilias told them not to panic. Since the cave had only one exit, they could defeat all the bandits quickly. The dark-haired man was nervous, but tried to trust the knight because the blonde woman spoke with confidence and seemed very strong. It wasn't only Ilias who impressed him. The knight team was also surprisingly fast and brave, and watching the professionals he realized every knight was defined by courage and strength. The blonde girl turned, looked at him, and said they had to go too, so he could not fall far behind the team, and the young man was frightened but did not resist. Entering the cave, the man and woman saw a battle between knights and bandits, each side fighting not to give the other a chance to win. The battle was bloody, and a man stayed back to avoid being hit by any weapon. Ilya commanded her squad and ordered them not to kill those who surrendered, but to keep hold of anyone who tried to escape. The fierce fight went on until the gang leader, whom Ilias had spotted, emerged from deep in the cave and moved to strike the girl with his large homemade stone weapon. Realizing the attack, the armored girl blocked the strike with her right hand and then asked her opponent what he hoped to achieve. Ilias smiled at her opponent as if he posed no threat. The girl asked why the gang leader needed such a big body if it did him no good. Angry, the man insulted the girl and tried to pull the club from her hand, but the knight broke the stone she was holding. Ilya decided not to carry such a large body to the kingdom, so she went straight to the cave to confront the gang leader for his crimes. The armored girl felled her opponents with a single blow, drawing the attention of her team and the dark-haired young man. Then the knight used detection magic to find all the bandits who fled the fight and bring back any survivors. The knights rejoiced at the victory and began to carry out Ilias's orders to speed up the mission. Relieved, the young man exhaled as a girl approached and said everything had gone smoothly, but he admitted he had been very scared to be in the cave and watch the fight. Ilias could not see why the man was afraid, since that man had seen the great knights succeed and should have been pleased by it. The young man still wanted to know one thing, so he hurried to ask the girl why Ilias did not use her sword without a scabbard. She quickly insisted she simply didn't want to stain the blade with dirty blood, and the man said he saw her try to grab a weapon but fail because the sword was stuck. The knight hesitated, unsure how to respond to the young man's attention, and when the girl became nervous and angry, the young man quickly cut the conversation short to avoid getting caught in someone else's anger. Once the knights carried out Ilias's orders, the mission to destroy the bandits was complete. The team captured 7 of the 30, the rest were killed in battle, and none escaped. Heading back to the kingdom, the young man thought he was already used to Ilias carrying him on her shoulder. The young man worried about something else, namely why he had come to a new world only to become a very ordinary person without inheriting anything. It occurred to him that he might be the victim of a divine whim, but the reason mattered little, and what he wanted most was to see the face of the one who had called him to a new world, because leaving him alone on the mountain was foolish. He did not care about overthrowing anyone or creating a harem. He only wanted a quiet life without worries. Meanwhile, deep in the forest of the kingdom of Theas, a man heard his subordinate report that the knights had destroyed the Gaido squad. The man chuckled and said he didn't want to worry about it because the bandits obviously weren't stupid. Dukola, leader of the alliance of mountain bandits, added that people feared his anger more than the torture inflicted by ordinary knights. After the mission, Ilias arrived at the Tes kingdom's palace and entered the conference room. King Tais, Marito Tais, thanked Ilias for the good work and said the knights did a great job this time. She bowed and said she would keep trying to carry out the king's orders. The man asked if she had managed to get any information. Ilias said the detained bandits were being questioned, but they had not said anything useful, so more time was needed. After listening to the girl, the king noticed Lord Leonard raise his hand to speak. The man said he understood that Lady Ratzel had managed to capture the villains, but she could not carry out the torture, so the Lord wanted to question the prisoners himself. Whispers spread through the room, so the Lord hurried to apologize, but he again pointed out that Ilias' small elite squad was vastly outnumbered by Lord Leonardo's. The men urged the king to also consider that the prisoners were not ordinary people, but bandits who kept others from living in peace, and the Lord looked at the girl and told her he was ready to help. Ilias endured others' distrust of her powers, and elsewhere the table was set for lunch. The dark-haired young man decided to try the food because he had not eaten in a long time. Though it was the young man's first time eating food from a new world, he found it quite good, and despite noting the spices, did not complain when the old man apologized for having nothing more to offer. Last night, when the knights returned from their mission, Ilias invited the young man to stay and celebrate the victory with the team, but he declined. The young man asked if there was anywhere he could sleep because he hadn't rested for 2 days, and an older man who heard him gave him a change of clothes, showed him a place to spend the night, and then hurried away. Back in the present, he felt lucky to have met such a kind grandfather, so he asked his name, and the man said Karagu Gesta Domi Trukavkin. The young man did not understand the old man, so he asked his name again. Even after the grandfather repeated it, he still could not understand. Seeing the confusion on his face, the man said the young man could just call him Grandfakarga. After the young man finished eating, the other man asked if he had time to go with him, and the young man agreed, so the man took him to Ilias. She apologized for the trouble and asked the young man for advice. That night she explained she could not get the information she needed from the prisoners by any means, and the young man clarified whether she was still interrogating them. Ilias said the questioning was continuing, but the bandits refused to reveal how they communicated. The man grinned and said he had not expected such a strong girl to have trouble questioning criminals. Ilias exhaled heavily and said things were not as simple as they first appeared. The girl said that even baits did not work on the bandits because they used magic to avoid any encounters with warriors. The criminals had detection magic that let them sense creatures with mana within a certain radius. The young man asked why the knights did not use the same magic, and Ilias said the bandits carried anti-magic stones. The girl placed a round stone on the table and showed the young man how it worked. Ilias added that the stone truly suppressed magic, and that its strength and price depended on size, so even a child could buy a small ball. The man was surprised at how accessible such an important item was. The man said those items mean magicians aren't appreciated in this world, and Ilias explained that although warriors can use magic, whenever a battle starts, a nearby stone always suppresses it. Realizing one spell couldn't be cast in this world, he was surprised that the new world was as cruel as his previous one. Later, the young man suggested hypnosis might help during interrogation, but the girl said the bandits had made sure it would not work on them. Because small anti-magic stones were implanted in the bandits' brains, the girl could not remove them without killing the prisoners. After a moment's thought, the young man turned to her and spoke. The dark-haired man offered to help and said he would try to interrogate the criminals himself. When a young man sat down in front of him, the bandit grew very angry and demanded to know who he was. Trying not to react to rudeness, he said he would not use brute force during the interrogation. The man refused to talk to the young man and said he would rather die than say anything. He assessed the situation and examined the person he was talking to, then saw wounds that may have come from earlier torture. The young man relaxed and declared the bandit faced a death sentence, but the bandit was not surprised because he was ready to die at any moment, and the young man could not understand why the bandit stayed silent even though his life was about to end. The young man said the other bandits would forget the man as soon as he died, so the criminal might reveal something important before he did, and he wondered why the bandit across from him was not afraid of death. The man began provoking the other person and said he could remain silent. The man reacted and asked what would change if he said anything, and the young man kept to his plan, saying he would be glad to hear anything. The man quickly adds that if he is satisfied, the torture will stop so the victim can calmly say goodbye to his life without violence. After watching the criminal's reaction, the young man said that if the bandit said nothing, he would leave and the knights would return to the room. His behavior was deliberate, meant to draw the man out and see his next move. The man refused to give up and only repeated what he'd said before. The criminal was sure nothing would change if he died. Then the bandit grabbed his head and said someone had filled him and his comrades with lasting fear, so dying under torture seemed easier than talking. The young man finally understood why the criminal refused to speak, because he feared someone more than death. After learning something from the bandit, the young man went to find Maya, who works at the church, to ask if she knows about magic that can change a dead person's soul. Grabbing the man, the girl in the dress hugged him, thinking Ilias had threatened him, but the knight assured him she had not done anything to him, and he pulled back a little and explained that the girl really wasn't to blame. The girl in the dress said such magic does exist and can bring back a dead person's soul, but Maya added it had long been forgotten, and the young man said everyone would want that power. Maya stared at him and warned that those words should not be said in front of anyone, since in some countries he could be executed just for saying he wanted to get her. Surprised, he asked how dangerous she was, and she said that kind of magic only causes harm. Some people used her to bring others back to life, but it never ended well. Maya told the young man that anyone who tried to bring the dead back to life eventually became a demonic lord, and he stood in a daze, unable to answer. The young man paused, unable to believe someone like that existed in the world. Later, he understood that if people became demonic lords after the resurrection, it made sense that such magic was forbidden. Maya also revealed that, in addition to this forbidden magic, there is something called the dead spirit spell. When he offered to help the woman with the books, he asked what the spell did. Maya said it could force a dead person's soul out and humiliate him among the living. It could control the dead or turn them into sacrifices, and in any case the magic was cruel because nothing was worse. After a moment's thought, the man asked the church girl if those called to be resurrected would still be conscious. The short-haired girl was surprised and told him he was asking about very difficult things. He quickly assured them he was asking detailed questions only to learn more about what was so terrible. Maya told the young man that she had once fought a man who used the same spell, and she and her comrades had to kill the monsters he created. Most of the monsters just gave a death scream before disappearing, but one behaved differently, and when Maya finished with another creature, it turned to her and thanked her for destroying it. The dark-haired young man listened closely to the girl from the church, then bowed and thanked her for the story. When the man left, Maya asked Ilias to keep an eye on him because he was too fascinated by scary things, but she believed he wasn't a bad person and might one day take a wrong turn. By then the young man had already reached the prisoners, smiled, and said he would be the one to question them now. The criminals refused to listen to him and demanded he get rid of them at once. Tired of hearing talk about death, the young man decided to ask directly whether men were really that afraid of becoming victims of a dead spirit spell. At first the bandits were wary, but then they pretended not to understand him, so he kept talking. The young man grew serious and said that once he understood the criminals' situation, he decided to offer them something new. The bandits expected to be freed, but the man said he could only postpone their execution until they dealt with the person who had cast the spell on them. The criminals tried to object, but the young man went on, saying that if they cooperated, they could die as people, not monsters. The men began to pay attention to the words of someone they had not taken seriously. The young man again invited them to be honest with him. The young man added that detainees benefit from confessing, because although agreeing to cooperate will anger their leader, it will keep them alive. The man continued, saying that although people will remain in prison, no one will torture them, and then they will be able to die without becoming monsters. The young man also assured that while in prison, the criminals will finally be able to think calmly about life. The bandits protested and did not believe him, so he insisted there was no point in killing them at night. One of the criminals said it was not worth the risk, since even if they told everything, they would still be killed. The man replied that there was no risk because the bandits understood the situation they were in, and the young man added that the knights had found the bandits' lair by accident, but were clearly wondering how it had happened. If the knights find the leader's location this way, he will be sure someone in the gang told them everything. The man glared at the men and asked what their leader would do next, noting the leader would suspect anyone captured by the knights. The bandit froze in fear. The young man concluded that he gives criminals the right to choose, because they can either die peacefully or become puppets in the wrong hands. He added that his offer would be valid until tomorrow and hoped the men would make the right decision. When he finished, the young man said goodbye to the bandits as the knights came to take them to the dungeon. Leaving the meeting room, he ran into his grandfather and a girl in armor. Their surprised looks embarrassed him, and he asked them to stop. The older man noticed the young man had a gift for those conversations and could easily build financial pyramids, but he clearly did not intend to live that life. Ilias asked whether the criminals would speak tomorrow, and the man said he doubted it but had a request for Grandpa Karg. With a plan, the young man asked to be heard, and the interested girl listened to everything, but when he revealed it, Ilias could not believe what she heard. The young man said it was nothing strange and there was no other choice. Grandfather Cargo agreed, but Ilias remained unhappy with the plan. After a while, the man in the dungeon said he and his comrades were kept in separate cells, so he could not talk to them at all. As the bandit considered his next move, he remembered how Dakota had shown them what disobedience could turn them into. The bandit leader showed what happened to traitors, so people feared cooperating with the knights. When it was time to change the guards, Grandfather Cargo asked if anyone had told him anything important, but the knight replied that all the criminals were silent. The bandit was pleased, since it meant his comrades had not betrayed each other. The knight added the execution would be delayed for a time, but this would require more food for the prisoners. Grandfather Cargo said it was not a problem, because the executions would be postponed for only 3 people, and the rest would be killed soon to avoid wasting resources. The bandit grew nervous. Grandfather Cargo explained that even if all the criminals try to cooperate, they will give the same account, so keeping only 3 alive is enough. After hearing the guards talk, the bandit realized what the young man conducting the interrogation meant, because their leader wouldn't care who betrayed him and would just suspect anyone who was caught. The prisoner made up his mind and sent for the guard, saying he would tell everything he knew, and asked that the young man who had questioned them be brought right away. Grandpa Cargo asked why they couldn't wait until tomorrow, which angered the bandit, and the guard said the boy was asleep so it would be easier to write his thoughts down for now. When the man handed the bandit a piece of paper and a pencil, the bandit hesitated again, but thinking about what awaited those who would be killed, he decided to write as much information as possible for the knights. Cursing, the man tried to write down everything he remembered about his leader, while Grandfather Cargo stood nearby watching the bandit. The next morning, Ilissa said 5 of the 7 criminals agreed to tell everything they knew. While having breakfast, the man said he would talk to them again to get the details. After trying to get confessions from the prisoners, the young man saw the girl was not confessing, so he looked at her questioningly. Ilias didn't want to give up the sheets, so he looked at the young man and asked what kind of person he had been before coming to the new world. The knight knew nothing about the man's past because he refused to talk about himself, so she doubted his motives. He used people's weaknesses to his advantage, and she clearly did not like that. Ilias said such behavior was typical of criminals or people connected to them. The young man quickly dismissed her suspicions and said he was an ordinary man who wanted a quiet life. The armored girl could not believe it because she still did not understand why the man used that method to get the information. When faced with suspicions, the young man replied calmly that a peaceful life means not wanting to cause problems or get into trouble. In the man's previous world, there were many ways to learn other people's viewpoints, and contacting many people could make meetings both useful and problematic. To live a normal life, a person must know how to protect themselves from bad people and how to behave around them. That is exactly how the young man's past life went. Ilias couldn't figure out what the man was really like, since he behaved one way with her and another with the bandits, and the young man said he just adapts his behavior to whoever is in front of him. Ilias behaved like a knight in any company, the man added, and that was how he differed from the young man, so the girl assumed the young man would become evil when he met evil, but the young man said he would only become someone who understands evil. Unable to reply to the young man's words, the blonde-haired girl watched him sip his tea for a while, then gathered herself, lifted her mug, and said she now understood everything. Night echoed what he had said, and the warped mirror made the young man smile. The couple stood drinking tea, and the girl said living a peaceful life is not so easy. After bringing the three together, Maya said that processing the criminals' information allowed them to draw some conclusions. Reports show the bandits regrouped into a large organization called the Bandit Alliance, led by a one-armed man who wields forbidden magic. The alliance's leader was Dakota, a former member of a kingdom's assassination squad, and May added that after he violated the ban he became wanted, then committed several crimes in Garn before ending up in the kingdom of Theus. The young man realized Dakota had used the experience from his criminal past, so he shouldn't be too hard to deal with once you learn his habits. Ilias interrupted the young man's thoughts and said the man looked like a villain. Maya reviewed the information and agreed, and when he went into the city, he noticed the kingdom of Ties he had entered was very prosperous. He remembered he couldn't enjoy the street because Ilias had carried him in a bag, and after that, he never went outside in that way. The man assumed the king was a very good ruler, and Ilias said both the current and previous heirs had taken good care of the people, so because everything was fine, the girl was happy to serve as a knight for the good of the kingdom. Ilias added that as their country prospered, more merchants came, but Ilias could also attract bad people who needed to be dealt with. The man pointed out that the bandit group was large and hard to capture, so the girl replied that she would summon all of Lord Ragdo's knights. Lord Ragdo is one of the royal generals who protect the kingdom of Thais, and Ilias served under him. The young man asked how many knights she commanded, and she said there were only 30. Then the man asked if there were other squads, saying it would be much easier if the woman asked them to join, but Ilias sank a little after hearing him. The girl said the young man was right, that she should not put her reputation above everything, and that she should seek help. Ilias understood the citizens' safety was paramount, so she would immediately call a meeting to ask other squads for help. The young man asked if they could hold the meeting in the barracks, and when the girl asked why that was necessary, he said he was only a stranger she had recently found, so he was unlikely to be allowed into the castle. Because the man was serious about the case, he did not want his plan discussed unless he was present. After hearing his offer, Ilias waited until nightfall and gathered everyone who could help her in the building next to the castle. Thanking everyone for meeting so late, she began to explain what she wanted to discuss with the audience. The Lord stopped the girl and told her not to go into details. The man then turned to the audience and asked how many knights the commanders were willing to provide to help Ilias. After hearing his comrades, Lord Ragdo said he commanded the most knights, 300, so he would take command himself. The young man nearby saw the Lord for what he was, since he clearly did not want to help and only wanted to take the case for himself. Grandfather Cargo told the boy that some men refused to recognize Ilias's merits and position because she was a woman. While the commanders argued, he thought it made no difference whether a man or a woman led the mission, since what mattered was how effectively they worked. Grandpa Karg had grown tired of hearing about men harassing Ilias and did not trust her with the case she had been avoiding from the start. Pointing at the young man, the adult man asked him to give his thoughts so the commanders would stop talking nonsense. The room fell silent, and everyone looked at the man who had barely been noticed. Then Lord Ragdo asked the old man what kind of person he was. The old man said the young man had given the knights the information they needed about the bandits, so he clearly had the right to speak. Asked by the Lord whether he objected to his command, the man replied that it made sense to command the one with the largest army. If the Lord wanted to be commander-in-chief, he had to know all the subtleties of the task. To convey those thoughts, the young man took out a map and unfolded it on the table. One man said the bandits' routes were on the map, and the young man suggested assigning roles to every squad member right away. Seeing that the young man was well prepared for the conversation, the Lord confirmed his assumption that he would be responsible for the area where the organization's leader was located. He continued assigning the other commanders detachments so no important area was missed, but when the queue reached Ilias, no one answered the young man's question about who would work with her, and the room fell silent. Staying calm, the young man said Lady Razzle would be held in reserve to handle supplies on the trade road, and her squad would step in if a main unit could not manage the task. Lord Ragdo was satisfied with the man's decision and asked him to continue distributing the kingdom's forces, but Ilias had not expected what happened, and the girl was indignant and angry that the young man did not stand up for her and instead followed the Lord's orders. At the start of the operation, the man tried to reason with the woman, but she ignored him even though she knew the supply squad was a crucial part of the plan. What worried him most wasn't her mood, but that she was walking too fast and wouldn't carry him this time. He still hoped he'd gain traits for the new world, but none appeared, and Grandfather Kargu apologized to Ilias for not standing up for her properly. While the knights talked among themselves, one man lost all strength to walk, which his companions noticed later, and at the same time, while the supply squad walked through the forest, Lord Ragdo's squad was already fighting the bandits who had been discovered. The criminals did not understand how the knights found them and tried to hide so they could tell their boss they had been discovered. Their squad leader ordered the knights to kill everyone they caught and leave no survivors. Entering the bandits' camp, the man said he could not imagine how useful the document the guy had shown them would be. The Lord was pleased with how the unfamiliar young man behaved at the meeting. The young man was also surprised that Lady Ratzel managed to get information from the bandits. Above all, the Lord liked that she turned to him for help, after which she became reserved, so the man wanted to honor his family even more with his deed. Something hidden under the tent pulled the commander from his thoughts. Someone lay under the cloth, motionless. When the Lord saw the body, he knew he had to check who was inside and pulled back the cloth to step in. Seconds later, the corpse came to life, and the Lord realized a death spirit spell had been used on the camp's bandits. Two criminals escaped the knights and went to their boss to report that someone had betrayed them. Ducola was annoyed and surprised someone dared defy him, because all his subordinates knew the punishment for betrayal. Still, the man did not despair. He smiled maliciously and said he had a plan even for this outcome. The battle raged as the knights attacked criminals who no longer looked human. The revived corpses moved under the bandit leader's command. Lord Ragdo fought with his squad but could not understand how the enemy used magic, since the knights had special anti-magic stones, and monsters were clearly more useful to the enemy in battle because they did not die from blows that would kill humans. The commander warned his squad to be careful because any knight who dies will turn into a monster, and the Lord said people use magic to exterminate the dead. When the gang leader tried to flee with several subordinates, the Lord saw it in time and ordered the fugitives caught, but the commander realized that sooner or later someone in his squad might die and become a dangerous dead man for former allies. During the battle, Ducalo ran as far from the camp as he could, saying people are much more useful after they die, and a subordinate asked the boss why his magic still worked despite the knight's anti-magic stones. Ducola, the head of the organization, replied that anti-magic stones don't dispel nearby magic, but only sever its connections, and when the subordinate didn't understand, Ducola said the Spirit of Death spell was special because it was forbidden. The spell trapped a soul in a corpse and turned it into a zombie that once destroyed entire countries, but its advantage is that the dead emit mana, which affects nearby zombies. The gang leader said again that it didn't matter whether the knights had stones. With corpses nearby, he could keep raising new zombies. Dacola had hidden several of the living dead inside a barrier near the camp, and when the stones came close, the barrier would be destroyed, after which a crowd of angry dead would attack a squad of knights. If someone gets too close to a person who is near death, they will become a zombie, even if they were killed by someone else. The man said this to intimidate his subordinate further. Fright almost made the man drop the bag, so Dakota told him to be careful with his treasure. The gang leader also said he was even grateful to the knights. Depola realized that if his entire team survived, he would have to share the treasures, so the fewer people there were, the better for him. Ilias interrupted the man's monologue when she saw criminals fleeing from her. She said she felt no joy. Decola thanked the knights. Standing on a small slope, the girl in armor looked at those she had hunted for so long, her entire squad behind her, and Ilias Ratzel introduced herself to her enemy and said that today the path of the head of the Dokal bandits would end. The man had not expected to meet the royal knights again, but he was not afraid and said confidently that the girl was wrong. Ilias showed no emotion as she came down the slope and faced her enemy without fear. The man stopped and asked who had shown her the route he would use to retreat, since it had to be someone else. But Ilya said she had found the spot where the organization's leader would run, and Kola did not believe her. He refused to believe that a girl had exposed his plan and used other knights as bait to detain Doko herself. The group's boss said he didn't mean any arrogance. There was a man he knew who understood how the rabble lived. After the man spoke, a dark-haired young man appeared not far from Ilyas, the one Dakota was talking about. The guy stepped closer to the girl and told Grandpa he could handle the car. An onlooker was surprised because the guy did not look like a fighter. The young man admitted it and said he was sure he was the weakest among those present. The bandit leader asked how the boy had found their hideout, and the young man said he was just lucky to stumble on him while lost in the mountains. Amused by the answer, the man asked how the young man had negotiated with the captured criminals. The young man answered truthfully again, explaining how he had done it. The leader also asked whether the boy thought the living had their own purpose, and the young man said they did only as long as they were useful. After a brief talk, the criminal posed one final question about what kind of magic the boy used to track him. He looked at the other man seriously and said it was probably called understanding. The bandit leader seemed pleased with that answer. The man expected the one-armed fighter to try to escape during the fight because the fighter knew his limits, so it was not surprising that he had escape routes. The young man saw how the man used his death spirit spell to control the bandits with fear, and he was planning another outing before the mission because they had found no bodies that day. The bandit leader probably felt no pity and did not bury the bodies, since he was clearly not that kind of person, and the young man wondered what he was doing with the corpses. He concluded that if the corpses had vanished, they had probably been moved somewhere they could be useful. Turning to the boy again, the gang leader said he would make a great villain and asked who he was, but the young man replied he was just an ordinary civilian. The man didn't believe it, since a normal person couldn't read the scum's thoughts, so the leader asked where the boy came from. The young man said that only criminals can do as they please. The man already knew who he was talking to and smiled maliciously. Looking again at the boy's dark hair and eyes, the man said the boy had clearly lived on Earth before. The young man did not believe what he heard. The man's sharp reaction made the criminal realize he was right, so the criminal admitted she really existed. The young man was confused and asked how the bandit knew Earth existed. The man laughed and said he had known about the other world for a long time. Then the bandit grew angry and shouted that the spirit of death spell that destroyed his life and brought dark times to the world, along with the magic that revived the dead, were all caused by the Earth. Earth was the cursed parallel world that created all the forbidden techniques, and when the bandit spoke, the young man was stunned, while Ilyas behind him could not hide her surprise. He could not believe that resurrection magic was made by someone born on Earth. Seeing Ilyas, he realized she knew nothing and saw no point in lying to the doll. Because the man had that information, the young man thought the bandit leader would not want to kill him right away and asked what else the leader knew about Earth, but the leader said he did not know much. The criminal told the boy to find out on his own, since he now had something new to think about. Then the bandit thanked the boy for the chance to talk to someone interesting, pulled out a knife, and attacked the young man. Ilyas managed to repel the attack just in time, and 2 knives fell to the ground. It surprised the young man because the opponent had only one hand to fight with. The girl in armor told the young man to stay still so it would be easier for her to protect him. He agreed without objection. Dakota ordered his men to attack the knights and warned that anyone who disobeyed would be turned into a zombie. He could not stand still because the knights were trying to neutralize him as quickly as possible. Ilyas attacked a man who, because of her strength, could only defend himself and was more vulnerable with one hand. After Dokula repelled Ilyas' attack, he praised her, saying it was the first time he'd seen someone so strong. She ignored his compliments because he, the bandit, was clearly enjoying the situation. He was slightly annoyed she refused to play along, but he still said he understood why she was in command of the squad. After a short talk, the band decided to try another knife trick and threw the knife high into the sky. The knife was surrounded by dark energy, so Ilyas, seeing what was happening, ordered one of the knights to shield the young man with a protective barrier. He hadn't expected another attack, so he relaxed a little when a knight using magic approached. Ilyas added that Dakota had used a death spirit spell. The bandit leader again praised the girl's quick wit and quickly reminded her that the men beside him would carry out any order he gave. After Dokul spoke, a huge monster swung a great sword at Ilyas, but she deflected the blow, and when she saw the foe, the knight remembered defeating him in the cave, a fact the man confirmed. The gang leader also pointed out that the girl had no sacred weapon, so she would find it harder to fight the dead. Once the death spirit spell fully covers the nearby area, the monsters will keep fighting even if the doll dies. Ilias refused to despair, raised her sword, and said she would deal with everyone to end the battle. Then the armored girl told her team to start jumping. The young man couldn't tell what Ilias wanted to achieve and was surprised by how high the knights jumped. Realizing the rival's plan, Dekoa began scattering anti-magic balls, shouting that he would not let her use magic. Noticing the many anti-magic stones before her, the girl said she had no intention of using magic at all. Ilias only wanted to deal with the original source of the problem, so she dispelled the dead's looming mana with a single blow, which amazed her call. The armored girl fought confidently, calmly assessing the developing battlefield. Ilias told Okal to use every trick he had to get it over faster. Okal agreed, which surprised the young man the knight was guarding. Using what the young man called a smoke screen, the bandit surprised his opponents. The girl screamed at the opponent when she realized he was trying to avoid fighting her. The man admitted it and said he really wanted to escape. After the bandit moved a little away from the girl, a spear thrown from the forest struck him. Because of the injury, Dakota could no longer get up. He looked at Ilias and accused her of cheating, but the young man assured her she did not know anything. Seeing the man, the stranger realized the man had guessed his escape because Dakota had already slipped past the knights earlier, and the young man, noting that everything was going to plan, warned grandfather Kaga about it. The young man realized the best time to attack was when Decolia began pointing out the opponent's mistakes, after which the opponent would try to escape. The bandit asked if this was the same method the young man used, and the criminal was even glad that the man who revealed his plan was the one who defeated him. Decola began talking to the young man and said that under different circumstances they would have become friends, but he replied that he did not like people who kill. The guy added that he would hardly have left the right path of his own free will, so the man changed the subject. The bandit said that among his belongings was a map showing a very secret place. The man looked at the young man and said it was a parting gift for someone who had caught his interest. The young man was surprised that a criminal could stay so calm and cheerful in such a situation. Nicola asked the young man his name, and he agreed, but it was too late because Ilias raised his sword above the bandit's head. In his final moments, the man still heard the name of the person speaking to him and smiled. Ilias cut off the bandit's head before their conversation was finished. Wiping blood from his sword, Ilias asked if the young man wanted to explain why the enemy knew about his home world, and the young man said he had already accepted his fate and would accept his punishment. He doubted he would learn anything more, but would not have minded if Dakota had lived a little longer. He also thought the girl had to kill the criminal because he might try to escape or fight back. Ilias protested, saying he was too badly injured to fight. The man still insisted the girl had done nothing wrong because he had only come up with plans to catch the bandit. The girl argued again, saying the young man's plan made sense even though she did not like it, and the young man sighed, adding that if she felt up to it, he would hear why she killed Dokkel when he was already defenseless. Apologizing, Ilias first said she was scared, then immediately corrected herself and said she was disgusted by how the young men looked while talking to the criminal. The girl reminded the man of the crooked mirror analogy. Since the young man heard about Dakota, he began to resemble Dakota. After the man spoke to him, Elise became more anxious. She thought that if the conversation went on, the young man would take his side, so she could not hold back. The young man thought about his true feelings and realized he and Decola understood each other even though she was a murderer, and he did not condemn her, but praised her for keeping him on the right path. Though Ilias blamed herself for her recklessness, the young man praised her again and told her she had done the right thing. The young man added that the girl acted after weighing the likely outcomes, and that was commendable. Ilias calmed a little but couldn't understand why the man spoke to her like a child, and the young man then said he was older than her. She was surprised by what she heard when he asked Ilias's age. After she said 18, he only said he was older. She couldn't believe he was actually older than her, so she suspected there were elves in his family, but he replied that he was just an ordinary person. Remembering how the young man had addressed her, Ilias thought he was no older than 16 because he was Japanese and really looked like a teenager. Learning about the age difference, the girl quickly apologized and he reassured her not to worry. Confused, Ilias decided he should act like an adult. Surprised, Ilias did not expect the young man to be so serious, so she blushed and agreed he should act more mature from now on, and after the mission they rode back in a cart to avoid walking. Finally, the knights destroyed all the remaining bases without losses, and with Maya's help they eliminated all the zombies, and though some were wounded, no one in Lord Ragdo's squad died. The young man also thought Commander Leonor was a capable fighter but lacked tact. The man also learned that Duck Hall's head would be displayed to the public. Most of all, he worried that some people knew about the Earth, and that people on Earth had created forbidden techniques. He realized he still had a long way to go before reaching a calm, ordinary life in the New World. As the troops returned to the Thai's kingdom, a man with animal ears and a tail sat in a tent somewhere in the forests of the mountain range. As soon as night fell, the man looked out from his hiding place, but he did not know what to do. Eventually, the young man woke in a simple bed in a private room, sat up a little, and realized he felt more rested than he had since arriving in this world. Still, the young man worried that his muscles were very sore after the mission. Recalling the previous day, he remembered his conversation with Ilias after returning to the kingdom. The girl asked what he wanted to do, and he said he first had to get permission to stay in the country, and she said he would have no problems with that. After that, he asked Ilias for advice on finding a permanent place to live. Remembering he was still under the spell, he decided to learn a new language. To cover daily expenses and save for a new house, he looked for a part-time job. The girl warned him he could not do everything he wanted. The young man thought it would be better to return to prison, where he would be fed. Ilias sighed and said the young man could expect better conditions. To help, the girl offered him a room in her house until he found a place to sleep. Ilias said there were rooms in her house, and that night when she told the young man he would not have to pay for accommodation, he was delighted and agreed at once. Later, the girl wondered if this had been the guy's plan from the start because he agreed so quickly. The young man said he simply did not want to create problems, and that living with a girl would mean he would not have to think about many things. Thanks to Ilias's kindness, a young man who had been thrown into another world with nothing began a new life. The lonely house stood near the market, and the young man was staying temporarily in one of its rooms. Not wanting to stay at home, the man decided to take a walk and look around, hiding his striking black hair, and when he reached the market, he saw many people selling produce from their vegetable gardens. Currency was simple. A copper coin was worth 100 yen, a silver coin 1,000 yen, and a gold coin 10,000 yen. Market prices were easy to understand because they matched Japanese prices. Walking through the market streets, he wondered why there was no salty food when a hurried girl fell at his feet, dropping a basket of vegetables and fruits, and he asked if she was okay. The girl stood up and thanked the young man for his concern, then said she was fine, and when someone saw she had ruined another person's basket and became very upset, the young man decided to help her avoid trouble. The young man put a basket in front of the girl and told her to collect everything in it, and she then realized he had bought everything that had crumbled because of her, so he hurried away from the center of the street to avoid disturbing passers-by. Sarah thanked her savior, quickly introduced herself, and when they reached the building said it was her tavern, Dogbone, but the man was not impressed by the name, so someone pushed him. A man came out of the building and asked what kind of young man was standing next to the girl. After the girl explained the recent situation, he relented and realized he had just helped that person. When the man realized the young man was a good person, the Dogbone Tavern owner said the young man's name was Gauze. The owner then offered to pay for the basket, but the young man asked for a cooked lunch instead of money. Although it was agreed, Sayers admitted the tavern's food was not good, but the man had no choice, so while he waited for his meal, he asked the girl a little about the new city he would be living in. Cyrus studied while working as a waitress in her spare time to fulfill her dream of opening a clothing store. She said nobody wants to take her as an apprentice, so she teaches herself and uses the money she earns to buy clothes and try sewing her own. Sayara smiled because she liked what she was doing, and the young man immediately noticed how positive his new friend was. He sagged a little as he realized how different he was from her, but she cut him off and asked where he came from and where he was staying. The young man said goodnight had helped him, and he borrowed a room to stay in. When he revealed he was Ilias Ratzel of the Ragdo squad that night, the tavern owner and the waitress were shocked. They could not believe the man was talking about someone who could fell an entire forest with a single blow. The young man did not know his friend was so famous, and Sierra said there was no one in the country who did not know her. The girl added that Lady Ilias had won the Thai Swordsman tournament by defeating every knight with her strength, and when the man tried to change the subject by claiming he still knew the old hag, Sierra revealed she knew about him. Grandfather was the Lord of the Spear, one of the top 5 masters of the TSA Spear, and the young man slumped a little because everyone around him was famous, so Sarah asked if he had been the man who helped catch the bandits from the mountain, and he said he had only pointed the way. The girl said she wanted to see Lady Ilias in battle one day. After the young man told her battle was unpleasant to watch, she drooped. When he saw how upset the girl was, the man decided he probably should not have said such serious things to her. Later, Syra repeated that Lady Laius is a wonderful person, though many disagree. The girl quickly assured him she was not one of those, and the man understood anyway. To cheer up a new acquaintance, the young man told her not to worry because a lace would always defeat evil, and Sarah smiled again when she heard it. After Gauze brought the cooked dish, the young man thought about bringing Ilgi since some people supported her, but as soon as he tasted it, he spat the food back out, and Sarah asked whether it was that bad. The young man decided he'd only bring Elias here when the tavern had something tastier because the food tasted bad, and Sarah, seeing his reaction, reminded him she had warned him about this. After meeting Gauze and Sarah, the young man returned to the church and asked Maya for help, and she noticed how quickly he had made new friends. After eating dinner at church the other day and finding the food acceptable, the young man told a girl he knew about it, and after talking about Gyuza, asked Maya to teach him how to cook at least one delicious dish. Seeing his new acquaintances speechless, the young man asked Maya if she was some kind of celebrity. God could not believe the young man had asked the head of the church to teach him to cook. Maya said she used to be a demon slayer. The young man asked if she had free time, and Maya said she had just finished her report. Maya relaxed and said junior employees usually handle the documentation. When the woman agreed, the man said he would leave Goza to her and added that salt is not sold in this country. The girl said salt is a delicacy for the nobility. The man told me that back home salt is widely available. Maya said she should speak with the trading company about lowering salt prices and securing steady supplies. The young man asked the girl for more details about the person who handled the sale and wanted to ask her about the carrier spell. When Maya heard the second part of the request, she was surprised and asked if the man had any problems, but he said he was only asking how long it would last. According to Maya, the magic lasts a week after it's applied, so the burden has 4 days left and the girl will renew the spell then. Seeing the girl's reaction, the young man asked if there was a problem with the spell, and after a short pause he realized he was being played. Maya explained that she hadn't used that kind of spell in a long time and believed she had made a mistake when she cast it on the young man. She hurried to reassure him that it was not so bad, but warned of some minor side effects, and when he asked what they were, she said that after a while he would feel pain in his muscles. She remembered that muscle pain might not show up right away, but could get worse over time. After mentioning the side effects, he realized where his morning muscle pain was. Pain returned all over his body, so he asked the girl Maya to heal him with magic, but Maya said it was impossible to heal him, and his cry of pain rang through the church. Not wanting to delay visiting the shopping area, the young man went as soon as he could with Sarah, and a girl at the entrance met the couple and asked them to follow her. She led the young man and the other girl into a room where they waited for the right person, who arrived soon. The man who entered said his name was Ban, and that he was the head of the trading company they had come to. Ban said he had read the letter and realized people were coming to him for the salt. The man offered Maya's friends a discount, but the guy refused. The young man said they had not come for a discount, but to lower the price of salt across the country, and the other man, surprised by his persistence, asked him to explain what he wanted. A kilogram of salt cost 1 gold coin here, equal to 10,000 yen, so the young man could not understand why it was so rare. After talking with Maya, he told the girl that on his homeworld salt was essential for nutrition and even caused wars. The girl explained this was caused by magical energy, since vegetables and grains were full of it, and that this energy provided nutrients that were also affected by the soil. The young man realized the minerals held the magical energy, and Maya wondered why the burden had so little of it. Maybe he simply did not eat well. Salt remains prestigious in this world because demand for it is low, and the young man repeated that he wanted to raise that demand. The man said increasing the number of deliveries would let them lower the price, and Ban agreed, but the other man said an immediate price cut was not possible and asked what the first man thought. As evening fell, drinkers began gathering at the Dog Bone Tavern. Sire served drinks and new alcoholic snacks so guests could sample them. Seeing a plate on his table that he had not ordered, the man asked the waitress what it was, and she replied that it was the tavern's new menu. Sarah said everything was free and urged them to try it, but the men knew that Gauze had cooked it and weren't willing to eat it. However, when I tried it, the men were surprised at how much they liked it and thought it was not Gauze who did it, because adding salt to the potatoes and chips made them much tastier, so the men liked it. The young man devised a plan to give away snacks to attract customers, and it worked. Ciara was glad the guests now asked for a menu instead of just cheap alcohol, and the young man said their meeting with Ban was very successful. Because of Ciara, the young man seemed very serious, so Ban was interested in meeting him. The guy also noted that the man spoke to him very politely, so they felt lucky. Visitors interrupted the conversation and called the waitress because they wanted to try many new dishes, so word spread about the tavern's new menu and Ciara stayed busy until night. After closing, the girl collapsed onto the table from exhaustion, since she was not used to shifts like that. Goss apologized to the man for asking him to help as well, since he had not expected so many people. At home, Ilias ate dinner alone while the man worked at the tavern, but something kept bothering her, and she could not eat properly because it was late and the young man still had not arrived. The night tried to push those thoughts away and told itself the man would come back tomorrow. By morning, the young man's muscles ached again, and he could do nothing about it. He also worried about the tavern's lack of staff. Gauze solved the problem quickly by hiring several older women to help him, and the most domineering was Grandfather Cargo's wife. So the next morning he went to the bathhouse for salt and met an old man in the building whom he told about the problem from the tavern. After listening to the young man, the old man suggested he speak to his wife so she could help with the gauze, and though the young man doubted his grandmother would be useful, Cargo assured him she was very energetic and had invited several other wives who were staying at home with her. Full of energy, the woman gladly accepted the young man's offer because she did not want to stay at home. When the man asked if she could work all day, she said her husband did not want her to feel lonely, so it would be fine. The young man realized it wasn't hard for a woman to start working, and her husband would stop feeling guilty. She escorted the men out of the tavern so they would not interrupt her and her friend's work and told them to take a walk, and the young man and the old man accepted the advice and went for a walk while the weather was good. Taking out the card, the man asked Grandpa Karga to look at it, but Grandpa Karga did not understand why. The man explained that the points marked on the map showed where Dakota hid the treasures and also identified the bandits' bases and caves. Before he died, the bandit said something important was hidden at one of the bases, so the young man assumed it was related to the Earth, and after studying the map, he realized the hardest part would be reaching the most remote base, which likely held the item. A man asked what had happened to the original maps, and the old man said Ilias had taken them to Lord Ragdo to give to the king. The young man knew that once the map reached the king, the bases would be searched. Grandfather Cargo said the hikes would start in a few days. Unsure he would have time to search anywhere, the man did not expect the old man to tell him to leave at once. Grandfather Cargo realized the boy wanted to find out what gift the criminal had left him, so he handed the card back. Unsure whether they could search for treasures on their own, the young man hesitated, and the old man said they had to hurry before it was forbidden. They saddled their horses and set out to find bandit bases. When they reached the forest, everyone left the animals behind to travel light, and one man asked if they would be all right, while another said the horses could fend for themselves if attacked. On hearing this, the young man asked whether such powerful horses would attack a passerby, but the old man assured him everything would be fine. As they walked through the forest, the younger man asked if the man really defeated the wyver by throwing a helmet at it. The old man was surprised that someone had told such an old story to him. The man agreed and threw the helmet, thinking it would be a shame to throw his spear at a flying monster since the hag loved that weapon. After telling a short story, the old man removed the branches and told the young man to follow him, and it turned out the young man found the cave entrance shown on the map, which was marked in a different color. Grandfather Cargo warned the man to be careful. Then the group entered the cave, lighting a torch as they went in, and inside the traveler found nothing dangerous or unusual. Plain straw covered the floor, and knives, magic stones, and barrels for battles lay around, while a worn diary or old book sat in the drawer that held the gems. The young man took the book, realized it was very old, and assumed it was Dockel's diary, but when he saw the inscription he froze, and the old man, noting his reaction, asked what had happened. Grandfather stepped closer, but when he saw the inscription he realized he couldn't read it because it was in a foreign language. A few seconds later, the young man said the inscription was in Japanese, so only he could understand it. The old man didn't understand, so he asked if Japanese had been the young man's native language in his past world, and the young man agreed, adding that the diary said the book was the fourth sample of the Blue Demon King's surveillance records. At last the book appeared in their hands and they looked at it, the fourth set of observations on the Blue Demon King. It was the parting gift Decola had mentioned, and there was no doubt. Cargo asked the young man if he wanted to read it. Horrors he had heard earlier filled the young man's thoughts, including the creation of a demon king, a forbidden resurrection spell, and that an earthling had used them all. The book in his hands was battered, the title label barely holding in place, and the boy turned to the hag to tell him how things were going in a serious tone. Stunned to learn the boy came from another world, the old man still tried to believe the young man's words, and the young man asked him not to tell anyone about what had happened because he did not want Ilias and Maya to know about the book. The old man realized he didn't want to risk his relationship with them, so he decided to ask the young man what he wanted. The question surprised the boy, but he replied that he wanted to read this book, just not now. The old man said then he would miss his chance, The boy replied he would be alone if he read it. If the book gets out, the world will change. Kargu nodded and promised to keep the secret. Smiling broadly, the young man said he trusted his grandfather Karg, and because being found out would likely mean torture, he turned to the old man to ask a favor, and the old man looked up as if he already knew what he wanted. The old man promised the young man he could rely on him and would definitely deliver it to Lord Ragdo and the king. The boy smiled at the old man's words and handed the book to him. The companions left the cave. Kargu walked ahead, lighting the way with his torch. The boy told himself it was for the best. Kargu has an excellent reputation as a knight. It would cause trouble if the man read the book in front of him. Even if the man had read the diary, it was unclear whether the old man would keep it secret, because the knights were very loyal to the king. True to his knightly code, the old man will never break his oath, so the promise made to them will be kept. After leaving the cave, Kargu decided to check that everything was in order, yet the situation has become very serious. Smiling, the boy said he hoped to live in safety and to be accepted by others, and they soon returned to the village. Kargu drove on after saying goodbye to the young man, who went to the house and was greeted there by a girl. A man shouted, startled by what he saw. Ilya sat on the doorstep, clearly angry. The boy was surprised to find the girl waiting for him and asked how long she had been at the entrance, and she said she had been there since morning. The guy realized that if Grandpa took a day off, Ilya's could rest too, and she replied in frustration that she had been alone all day and felt lonely, but it was a good experience for her. Feeling guilty, a young man hurried to apologize to the girl who had sheltered him, and he invited her to dinner, but she immediately interrupted him, saying they had no food. The young man reassured her that everything was fine because he'd found a tavern where decent people worked, and the girl realized where he'd been all this time. As the young man tried to tell the knight about the recent campaign with the hag, she accused him again of having fun with someone else, not with her. Her gaze softened. She apologized, saying she had been offended because she wanted to spend her day off with someone but had gotten too excited. Ilya understood the young man had his own business. She must still be too inexperienced. The boy was surprised by her words. The young man suddenly slapped his cheeks with both palms, startling Ilyas, and asked her to wait while he changed before they went for a walk. Ilyas was surprised by the change in his behavior. After he changed, they went to the place where he usually spent his time. As she approached the building, the girl could not believe they had come to the dog bone because she already knew the place. The girl knew the tavern had good drinks but poor food, so she assumed punishment awaited her, while the young man knew she would soon change her mind. Reassuring them once more that everything was fine, the young man turned away. Confidently, he walked in and motioned for the confused girl to join him. The tavern was crowded. Noticing the newcomers, the waitress greeted them, but her expression changed suddenly. Ilyas was exactly why things changed, and Saria ran up to her and began to admire and praise the girl. The boy was surprised by Sarah's enthusiasm, but quickly accepted it. Ilyas showed no sign of her former resentment. A voice from the back of the tavern called the waitress, and the young man stared at the noisy visitors in horror, saying there had been even more of them lately, and asking if the girl was ready to listen as he watched Ilyas start trying new dishes. She was surprised the food was so good, but then felt pessimistic because the young man had managed so much in one day while she had not. The young man asked what Ilya thought of Sarah's greeting, and the knight answered that she was surprised, even amazed, and probably glad. The boy told her that Ilyas was popular with the people, not just with the knights of the Ragdo squad. Ilyas had always wanted to be as great a knight as her father. She still noticed that other people's opinions could strongly influence her. The child agreed with Ilyas. That is why people feel bad when accused and good when praised. The young man believed that if this inexperience were removed, his heart would weaken. Otherwise, Father Elias would have to harden his heart and become cold-blooded. Elias bristled at that remark because her father was a good man. Memories flashed before the girl's eyes. Her father, smiling, praised and thanked her for the flower wreath she had made. The young man told her not to be ashamed of being inexperienced, to hold on to happiness, move forward, and turn her anger into strength. A grateful smile crossed the girl's face as she looked at the young man's confident grin. In battle, Ilyas was without question the best knight. In every other way, she was worse than a girl her age should be. Convinced that if she did not behave according to her status, she would be no better than a beginner, the girl was stopped by the boy, who said that was not the case. The knight reminded the young man of his former self, because the girl still clung to a faint hope in others, and seeing her upset and betrayed, he realized bringing her to the tavern had been the right decision. Enough friends were here who would always support her. That's why the young man brought her there. Amid the noise at merriment, Elias rose from the table to join in the general fun. These people will be her strength. The fun continued even though the hag's wife began to grumble about the guests crowding the room. The next morning was sunny and calm. Ilya woke with a heavy head and struggled to get out of bed. Memories returned slowly, passing before my eyes. She got drunk yesterday, but it wasn't that bad. Burrowing into the blanket and squeezing the soft fabric, she smiled to herself. Yesterday she had a lot of fun. Life in the castle went on as usual. Kargu walked through the richly furnished corridors to the office on the right. Lord Ragdor in the study greeted the old knight and came to report to the commander of Theas's chivalric forces. When the hag handed the battered book to the lord, he had a fair question about its contents, and the old man said he had investigated it himself using a map left by the Bandit Alliance leader, while the lord inspected the cover and asked how the hag had learned about it. Embarrassed by the remark, the old man chose his words, while the lord, reading words in an unknown language, told the hag she had nothing to fear, and then looked at his faithful man and asked if he had read the book. The knight dropped to one knee at once and swore his first act would be to deliver the book to the lord unopened. The lord believed the old man and immediately guessed who was with the hag. The lord set the book down on the table and explained himself. Maya told him about it while Ilya stayed silent, but the man still asked whether the young man really came from another world. The old man looked at the lord and asked him to keep everything secret. The lord chuckled and agreed it would stay between them. The lord thought Kargu had not opened the book, but since he knew the young man could read the title, the old man said the book was the fourth sample of the Blue Demon King's research records. The lord realized the worst part of their world's history was the Demon Kings, and Blue was the fourth of them, and he needed to find out where the book came from, but knew it was better not to involve many people. By then the young man felt he needed to try harder to find work because he was still relying on a woman, so he decided it would be wise to consult a merchant or someone similar for advice. Lost in thought, he arrived at the trading company building. It had been 3 days since his last visit. "Ben, I met a young man." The man was grateful for the advice to invest in dog bone because it led to remarkable changes. The company owner planned to keep investing in the tavern, but the small staff gave him pause. A man and a younger man sat at a table to discuss trade and decided that making salt popular was a smart strategy, so they lowered its market price. After the bandits were defeated, more traveling merchants arrived and a wider variety of goods became available. Once the country grew richer, people's demand rose quickly. Everything was entertaining, but the boy wanted to ask Ban about a rumor because he was interested in rock salt, and Ban, to his surprise, said such a salt seemed to exist as crystals mined in a mountain range. The man hurried to please the other man. There was a lot of that salt in the unexplored lands. The young man also mentioned the highlight, but this is the first time the merchant has heard of it. He said this salt comes from boiling hot spring water, and if the mountain has many caves, there will be streams inside where you can collect it. Ban was delighted thinking about a new project, salt mining in Thighs. The new information fascinated him. Despite fears that everything might end in failure, the merchant was determined to explore the lands himself. The man said a real treasure lies dormant in the country. He will not miss this chance. The young man noted that Ban clearly understood profitable projects. Noticing the man's enthusiasm, the boy pulled a card from his bag and placed it on the table. It was a duplicate map of the leader of the recently destroyed Bandit Alliance. The merchant was amazed by the find. The boy said it must stay secret. The map covered a huge area, and the merchant kept thinking about the poor knights who must fight often. On this map, the Bandit Alliance leader has marked many unused caves made famous by explorers. The boy looked at Ban. Because people had studied them, their chances of finding something worthwhile were higher than searching blindly. The man remained amazed by the young man's resourcefulness, since they would handle everything themselves in this case, and he made sure Maya's recommendation was justified. Still, one important fact remained. The man wondered why the boy did not think that, with such valuable information, Ben would act secretly without telling him. Grinning at the question, the boy told Ben that a man can make the right decisions. The man realized he could be a good partner for a new acquaintance. Meanwhile, inside the royal palace, everyone focused on the found book. King Marito seemed very interested in her. Lord Ragdo, who was nearby, reported what he knew. The young man who helped Lady Ratzel played a key role in the mission. The king was very pleased, but Lord Ragdo was not. King Marito praised the bravery of the young man who arrived from another world. The king said he wanted to meet this remarkable young man. The king was very interested in him. The lord said he would invite the boy to the award ceremony, and the king added he needed to remember to order some good alcohol. Meanwhile, in the woods, you could hear Ban's enthusiastic cries, and Ban was clearly taking all the fun out of the research. Exploring the map, they found a convenient cave nearby. With no sign of wild animals, the young man planned to estimate the cost of a single study. The merchant insisted on coming along because he thought it would be a pleasant walk. The boy was surprised by the man's enthusiasm. The group's readiness to act without thinking was almost too much. The young man asked if he was used to it, and the other man boasted that he had once been a troublesome adventurer, but as soon as he became a merchant, he calmed down and now lived quietly. The young man wondered why he kept meeting unusual people while Goss and Sarah were, of course, good and not so flighty. After a while, they reached the right cave, where she hid among the tree branches, and as they went lower, the merchant noticed something. Bands realized they had reached a dead end. The cave ended sooner than expected, but it was perfect for hiding. The boy already regretted that their research had started with a failure, but the merchant didn't seem to care about the dead end ahead. After examining the wall briefly, Ben concluded a barrier spell had been cast there and assured the young man he had encountered one before. Pulling instruments from his bag, he asked the young man to hold the bag. Then he struck the stone with all his strength. Clouds of dust billowed up and left him stunned. The hammer proved enchanted to deliver a tenfold blow, and magical power flowed into him. Shocked, the boy realized he could not use something like that because of his background. Meanwhile, Banso saw a new passage. The merchant's eyes showed he had fully switched into adventure mode. The man treated the matter seriously. They walked forward, lighting their way with a torch. After a while, something made the boy stop. They stepped into a bright space filled with trees and green growth, as if the cave held its own hidden forest. The torch was no longer needed, so the merchant lowered it and looked around. Although the forest looked ordinary to the boy, he could not shake an uneasy feeling. Ban, meanwhile, was sure they had found something amazing. The boy looked toward the merchant, who sat beneath a tree with glowing flowers in its roots, and realized where they were. This place looked like the mountain that killed the Black Demon King, and Ban was surprised by the quick comment that pointed out the slime the young man had once stumbled on, since that slime had terrified the young man because the mountain was very hard to escape. Finding those plants was strange in a place with increased magical energy, and the band thought this mountain in Ties would be no exception. The merchant was pleased to discover he could launch a new business venture. The young man was amazed by how the man turned everything into a way to make money. What looked like a blunder at the start of the search suddenly turned into a success. It's a habit, and a good one. The boy assumed there must be some medicinal plants here, but something interrupted him. Everything suddenly blurred. The merchant shouted at me, but I heard nothing. My body went limp and my eyes closed, plunging my consciousness into darkness. Gradually his senses returned. Voices murmured nearby. People had noticed he was waking, but he still could not see. They asked him something, and he told them to be quiet. When he came to, people with black hair and pale skin stood in front of him, and his hands were tied behind his back. The man was partly immobilized. Rope bound his hands tightly. Panic rose as he realized he had indeed been kidnapped. He looked at his captors. The kidnappers had a striking appearance. Their black hair and red eyes stood out. They also had animal traits. The black-haired man stared at the kidnappers in shock, stunned to see they were half-humans of the beast race as the men pressed a weapon to his neck. The bound man wanted to know what had happened. A half-human said only their tribe had black hair. That meant he must be from a demonic race. He denied it. Surprised that he understood their language, the half-humans remained wary and wanted to know who he was. The man said he meant no harm and asked them to untie him, but the tribe did not understand him, leaving him in trouble again. Maya's words came back to him. The spirit spell lets the caster translate speech into a language he understands and memorize every word spoken to him. Because of it, the wanderer can understand any language he hears, but can only speak the common tongue, and he picks the most suitable language of all. It helped him a little in this world. Members of the animal tribe began threatening the man, waiting to see what he would do next and wanting to know if he understood their language, when someone suddenly asked who the black-haired man was. Baba, the tribe's leader, was elderly and calm about the man, who to her looked like a child. Men told her they had found and caught him while hunting, but had also seen a second who escaped, and the man realized the band was hiding well. The tribesmen began explaining more to Obaba. It became clear the man could understand their language but could not speak it. Then Obaba stepped forward and raised her will and her clawed palm in front of the stranger's face. Shender stood uncertainly as a stream of magic rushed toward the man. The wanderer asked what she had done with the host's spell. The youths of the beast race were stunned when he spoke their language. The village head gave him some of the tribe's magical energy. When he asked if it could affect his side effects, he learned it could not. Smiling, the woman noticed the spell was interesting, but odd because it had been cast in an unusual place. The man realized Maya had rushed the spell, which left him with muscle pain. He told the beast tribe he meant no harm and began talks. Now that he could speak to them, he should not have missed the chance to negotiate. In the kingdom, someone called to Ilias. Ragdor said the man who helped them catch the bandits should also be included in the awards ceremony. Ilias knew the man's abilities and achievements, so she understood why he was participating in the ceremony. All that remained was to tell him the news. When the girl accepted the man's task, Ragdor stared at her in silence, briefly making Ilias uncomfortable, and she called out to Ragdor. The man noticed the girl was more relaxed than the day before. Ragdor asked what had happened. Ilias looked embarrassed and blushed. She said nothing had happened to her, and Ragdor grew even more amused. Ilias looked better than usual. When she said it again, Ragdor grew even more amused. Ilias looked better than usual. The man told Ilias Ratsult to give the invitation to the guy and make sure he accepted it. The girl accepted the order, and Ragdor and Kargu smiled as she left. Kargo saw Ilias had changed for the better because of the man. Ragdor refused to admit it. Kargo said he would like a granddaughter like Ilias. Ragdor replied that he was the girl's father, not her grandfather. Breathing heavily, Ban ran through the forest, saw a marked spot on his map, and decided to return to rescue the man. While in the beast race tribe, the wolf-eared youths were stunned to hear the demon king was dead. Everyone was stunned that the demon king had been destroyed. Seeing their shock, the man realized he should not tell them that a slime had killed the demon king. Long ago, their tribe of black wolves moved into this forest to escape the black demon king. Since then, they had lived quietly and lost contact with the outside world. The world was neither enslaved nor destroyed. The village headman sipped his tea with a quiet sadness. The young man of the beast race wanted to find his friend Ban, but did not know where he was. Maybe Ban will return to gather more associates. Ban is not the sort to leave someone in trouble. This did not mean the tribe would be attacked. Until then, they had lived peacefully and without war. If they trust a colleague who has returned to ask for help, they can safely negotiate with him. Baba realized the man could have told his friend about them if they had not untied him, and that would have made the friend doubt them. The man then asked to stay in their settlement for a while. The woman agreed, but had one request. Bobo asked him to mediate between their tribe and the people outside the forest. He was stunned by her request. She knew they should have left settlement life long ago. You cannot live forever in this forgotten forest. Mastering both the tribe's language and the outsider's tongue was a major success for the tribe. People in Tessasha will be interested in them, so the man will act as the tribe's mediator in negotiations. He decided to help them build new connections. The village head was pleased. Some tribesmen were worried about her decision. Obama trusted the man. The man did not seem like a liar, so they thought they could trust him. She saw through him. Later he learned he had been unconscious for about an hour. The young tribesman apologized, but the man reassured him and asked in return for a tour of their village. Their houses were simple but sturdy. They hunted animals in the forest to feed themselves. The forest was on the mountain, but they still hunted animals there. When there were too many animals, the tribe could attack the entire herd. Villagers watched the men train, impressed by their speed and protection, and one man looked on with admiration because they were stronger than the bandits, which did not surprise the tribe since the warriors fought the Demon King's troops, so daily training was part of their routine. A sudden sound came from a distance, and after walking forward a bit, he spotted a small group of children and asked his escort what they were doing. The animal man warned him that if he was there, he would be cursed, since it was the home of an unwanted child. A white-haired girl from the beast race appeared before them, disheveled and looking innocent, and the man stared at her with wide eyes. Children of the animal race stood by the girl's home laughing loudly, and a man woke up, noticed them bullying the girl considered cursed, and frowned. He couldn't understand why they had done this to the white-haired girl, or why she was left in such a squalid, forgotten place far from the village. Smiling, the man said the girl was unwanted because of her appearance, drove the children out of the house claiming they could be cursed, and their laughter rang through the neighborhood. The scene overwhelmed him because he had been in a girl's position during his time in Japan. The man forced himself to calm down. It became clear to him that they knew nothing about it. He needed to ask Obaba why everyone bullied the white-haired girl. Panic swept the palace when everyone learned the black-haired man had been captured by half-humans. Kargo ordered everyone to search for him, but the man refused to tell Ragdor. Since it was Ilias's day off, Kargo hoped his acquaintance would be okay, and meanwhile in the demi-human village, a man entered a house where an animal race woman waited for him. On a tour of the half-human village, the man was drawn to a particular case and wanted to know why a girl was labeled an unwanted child. Pointing to the girl's appearance and calling her cursed, the woman said white hair was a sign of annihilation and that the Black Wolf tribe should not have children who looked like that. Abandoned at birth by her mother, her father never returned because of the huge beast. When villagers left her in the forest, the plants around her began to wither. After taking lives, they expelled her for being too different, and the tribe feared falling under her curse. Exiled outside the village, the girl was believed to bring only misfortune, but the man was unhappy about it because the villagers kept her away as a barrier against evil and thought this was the only way the cursed child could be useful, so he left the room silently after the woman's words angered him. Baba warned it was late, and she could not guarantee the man's safety outside the settlement. He replied in a flat voice that he'd be fine as long as he didn't try to leave. The magician wanted to examine the white-haired girl. The woman ignored the man's actions. Later, he ended up at the girl's broken shack, which was made of stapled boards and torn fabric. Seeing the man, the white-haired girl froze in fear and hid, while the stranger from another world tried to calm her, but she kept staring at him, and her whole body trembled. She curled into a frightened ball, trying to hide. At the same time, she began making indistinct noises. The man saw this and realized she did not understand him. He stared at the poor exile in a daze after the bearer's spell was corrected. It was necessary for him to understand the speech of the Black Wolf tribe's demi-humans. The girl continued to make indistinct noises as a shiver ran through her body. Heavy metal chains shackled her leg. The man looked at it with sad eyes, realizing the girl simply did not know the language, so he could not understand her speech. Trembling and sobbing, the blonde girl lived alone in fear since birth, her leg badly damaged by iron shackles. Outside the dilapidated, filthy shack, the black-haired man watched the trembling girl who tried to hide, but could not because shackles bound her leg, and her body shook with fear and panic. The wanderer couldn't understand why the girl was treated that way or forced to live such a terrible life, while the white-haired girl looked at him with tears in her eyes. Her terrible appearance and life circumstances brought the man to tears. Unable to bear the horror, he quickly moved to the girl and wrapped her in a tight embrace. The white-haired girl was startled and, in confusion, kicked him. In despair, the wanderer said she was lonely and afraid and spoke of everything she had been through in life. Those who forced her to live like this had no right to do so. Desperately, the man shouted about the girl's feelings. Alone, she probably wanted to protest to her fellow tribesmen but could not ask for help. Confused, the girl stared at him. That person thought a child not crying was abnormal. The world had already dried the white-haired girl's tears, and the hero struggled to hold back his own. A man fixed a steady gaze on the confused girl. She could not understand his words. Society had not accepted her. The wanderer decided to help her forget all the suffering she had endured. He would certainly find a way to prevent this from happening to her. Nothing will stop him from trying his best. If everything goes well, the man will live a calm, peaceful life. Sobbing desperately, the black-haired guy vowed the girl would never again know the pain and grief of bullying, and the white-haired half-girl watched him, chilled by his bitter tears, then sobbed convulsively in his arms. Some time passed and their bitter crying stopped. The young man calmed and released the girl from his arms. He calmly apologized for being seen crying, and she shook her head to show it was all right. The wanderer turned to the bestrays girl. He felt embarrassed to learn that the girl understood him. The guy stared at her, stunned, since moments earlier she had not understood a single word he said. He patted the girl on top of her head. Then he noticed her hair was glowing. His face showed deep shock as he looked at her glowing hair. He instantly drew the girl's attention and asked whether she wanted to leave her settlement, but the white-haired girl only looked at him innocently, not fully understanding, and he waited for her answer. Suddenly someone touched him. The stranger told him to calm down. He recognized the voice. It was Ban, someone he knew well. The man's ball was completely hidden under his clothes and a ribbon covered his face. The sight frightened him. For a moment, he thought the man was not his friend. The man had to take off the clothes covering his face. Another man sighed with relief and was glad Ben was okay. Ban said he had already called reinforcements to the village. The man tried to hide, but he heard the crying. The man realized with horror that Ban had heard him crying. He felt a brief, uneasy sadness while Ban kept talking. Karagu U-Squad waited at the forest edge, so they should have run, but he abandoned the plan. An awkward sadness hit him for a moment as Karaguru Justice Squad waited at the edge of the forest. They should have run, but he abandoned that plan, told Ban the locals wanted peace talks, and pointed out the white-haired girl, who was not there. Seeing an unfamiliar man appear in the form of a band, the white-haired girl hid in her shack again, trembling and staring toward them in fear. Trying to calm her, the man was interrupted when Ban asked about the villagers, and he had assumed the bandits knew them, but that was not the case, so he began to explain. Hearing the story, Ban broke into loud sobs as he realized everything. Then one man asked for a single request to be fulfilled, and another ran off in tears to carry it out. Watching the man leave, he wasn't sure if his actions would pull him away from a quiet life, but after careful thought, he decided to save the girl with his own hands. The white-haired girl clutched his clothes and met him with a pure, innocent gaze. This time he was willing to put aside his usual thoughts and desires about his quiet life for a while, and told the girl he would save her. The man wanted to give her freedom and planned to let her choose her own path without regrets. Staying calm was the best choice at the moment. Ilias couldn't find her boyfriend. She checked every place he usually went, but he wasn't there. That left her depressed. Upset that her assignment would not be completed, she was approached by a man sent by the ban. He was tired after searching for Lady Ilias for so long. The girl realized he would likely have information about the black-haired man. The messenger agreed. Captured by the demi-humans, the man left the woman stunned when she learned about it, while he was in the Black Wolf tribe's village, wanting to add another condition to the negotiations. The village believed the interlocutor wanted to change the negotiation terms, but that is not the case, and as agreed there will be a food supply, with any additional accepted conditions also compensated. If they accept the same terms, negotiations will wrap up quickly, but Baba believed that if they refused, they would attack the settlement. It wasn't like that. If they won't accept equal conditions, they simply won't receive the delivery. The results of the negotiations will depend on this. They will trust them only if they accept a single condition. Specifically, to let an unwanted child leave the settlement. The residents were shocked, but Obama reassured them. The man hadn't mentioned it before, and they would be happy to give it to him. Her words upset him. He thought the girl had left for her own reasons, and that they would be fine. A male beastman suddenly burst into the room screaming and called for Obama. A man from the animal race told the village headman that armed people were at the settlement entrance. The woman turned to him in surprise, and soon they were all at the settlement entrance. Obama and the residents wearily looked toward the man. The wanderer assured them the knights had come for him. They should have kept negotiating. Then a man learned about the village's strongest warrior and told that warrior he would fight the unwanted child. If the white-haired girl wins, she will be granted victory. Shock hit him when he believed he had been sent to eliminate the girl, and since no one objected to her removal, he chose not to correct the mistake. Villagers decided the man both pitied and despised the white-haired girl, so he challenged her to a duel to settle it between them. He simply smiled and did not try to correct the woman's thoughts. The village head refused to accept the condition. No one wanted to bear the girl's curse. The wanderer then had to tell them his knights would begin fighting in earnest. Kargu and Ragdor entered the field and faced each other with weapons ready. Before long the battle began. Weapons rang through the village. The force of the blows was overwhelming. Gusts of wind swept the field, and the villagers had to cover themselves. Kargu tried to attack Ragdor, but the gray-haired man struck the ground with a heavy hammer and stopped him. The knights' battle continued, and gusts from their blows swept through the village, forcing residents to take cover and knocking some back with the force. Then the man said the knights would not fight. As a result, few people came. Residents should not look down on the troops shown to them. The woman became annoyed. She understood how dangerous the situation was. His actions left them no other way out. With no choice, negotiations continued. Because the strength gap was clear, there were no problems. Then the man looked at the white-haired girl and announced the knights would not interfere in the battle and will only make sure the village's strongest warrior accepts the duel. Standing nervously near the tribesmen, the blonde girl was approached by a man who whispered something that made her panic. Concern tightened in the girl's face as the man walked calmly away. Kargu asked about their last battle, and the wanderer only smiled. The fight impressed him. It was a strong performance. The old man made it possible for them to see something interesting. Kargu felt a little worried about the situation, but the man calmed him and said he could be relied on. The village head agreed and introduced them to the strongest young man, who must deal with the unwanted exile on his own. She thought the man's fate was a curse that took away his life force, but he ignored her and wanted to start the fight immediately. The headman fell silent and ordered them to prepare for battle. The white-haired girl looked at the man with tears in her eyes, her sword ready, but she was terrified. Then the man had to call out to Grandpa Hag. Kargu raised his weapon and held it at the man's throat. The girl grew more desperate. The battle began when a young man from a half-human village shouted and charged the white-haired exile, but his weapon shattered before it even reached her. Everyone was stunned by what they saw. At the exact moment that would let her defeat the opponent, the dark-haired man shouted to the blonde woman. Though shaken by the fight, she pulled herself together and calmed down. The village exile took a fighting stance and prepared to attack her opponent. With a cry and tears in her eyes, she clenched her fist. Then the white-haired girl struck him, and her blow was so powerful the village's strongest warrior was flung a long way and crashed into a house. The residents were stunned when the exile defeated their strongest warrior, and he said his real goal was to make sure everyone heard the same thing. She is not a cursed child despite their hatred. Her white hair and pale eyes come from a genetic condition called albinism. It is not a curse. Only about 1 in 10,000 children show it. The loss of her parents could have happened to anyone. Afraid of the tragedy, the villagers invented an imaginary curse about unwanted children. In their ignorance, they committed a foolish act that became their sin. Not everyone believed him, but the duel proved the girl's value. The wanderer and the girl stood before the stunned residents. He continued speaking. There was a place where translucent trees grew, and they soaked up magic from nearby substances so their leaves glowed. The man pointed to the girl's glowing hair. Understanding the language proved useful then, as the girl's magical energy seeped in and weakened the bearer's spell, showing she contains a terrifying amount of magic. A man with a gloomy face told the residents the girl was exceptionally talented, just like the hero who defeated the Demon King. This child was not unwanted but a savior. Heaven sent the child to the Black Wolf tribe, who lived in fear of the Demon King. Residents were stunned by the news. Realizing what they had done to the girl, some fell to their knees. The man calmly told her he was taking her under the contract, and they began to leave the village. The man's performance stunned the knights, and his stirring words gave them goosebumps for a moment. Yet deep down he feared the villagers might rebel against them. Ban's guidance on how to release magic made the duel go smoothly, and the man realized he could not match Ilias's strength. By overcoming her fear of the village and a fear she had brought on herself, she gained an experience that will surely become her foundation. This was also for the village's good, as belief in the supernatural and false information had trapped them in the forest, but now they will see their mistakes and regret them. Annoyed by their claim that he had failed to convince everyone, he knew he was inexperienced. Suddenly the hag approached them. The gray-haired man stepped forward to speak to the girl, but she grew afraid and hid behind the guy. Kargu, in tears, asked the man to clear up the misunderstanding between him and the girl. Their joint performance amazed everyone. That is why the girl was wary of the man. Earlier, the girl had been excited. Her magic was on a completely different level. 10,000 villagers were afraid of her. So just before the duel began, the man whispered to her that if she lost, he would be destroyed with her. Hearing this, the girl panicked as Kargu pointed his weapon at the man's neck, and the wolf grew even more terrified. Because the villagers were afraid, she grew desperate for the man. The girl was an extraordinary child. The man did not try to resolve the misunderstanding. Although his companion still seemed innocent, she was not the same as before, and he felt too guilty to tell her the truth. The wanderer realized he would take good care of her when he returned home, make sure she was washed and fed, and talk to Ilias about where she would live. Suddenly something caught his attention. He stared into the distance in awkward horror. The gloomy Ilias was not far from them. She was angry about something, a dark aura radiating from her. With a malicious laugh, she noticed they had already solved the problem, and her smirk made everyone panic. They had no idea what to do. The man remembered Ilias had the day off. Because the search for people took longer, Ban could only call Ilias. When the knights learned the man was safe, they quietly spent the night in the cave while Ilias searched the forest all night, and the girl, on hearing this, grew angrier, laughed angrily, and the knights and the man became even more frightened. The hag pushed the man toward the girl. His grandfather's actions stunned him. The man then calmed down and apologized to Ilias. He stepped closer to her. He hugged her tightly. Grateful, he thanked her for going through the desperate search and being so exhausted. Ilias tried to say she wasn't tired at all. The knights watched with smiles. The man kept talking while holding Ilias close. The girl, not fully understanding the situation, was afraid for him. The wanderer took all the blame and was glad she was so worried about him. Ilias blushed, and she was happy he was fine. The knights were relieved the matter was settled. If Ilias had shown up earlier, they would have closed the case much sooner. Ban did not consider that. Ban was sure the man would not agree either. If Ilias were here, things would only get more complicated. Hearing the man's words, Ilias frowned. This embarrassed the man. Inside, he was yelling at the men. The man had just calmed Ilias, then they suddenly began talking about it, and he knew he would have to bear the pain from the girl's strength because she was still angry. The man denied everything, but the woman no longer believed him. She grabbed his waist, causing him pain. The white-haired girl watched with tears in her eyes. Ilias then hugged him tightly, hurting him. After that, a single blow from Ilias knocked the man unconscious. He was a weak visitor from a parallel world. After it was explained, Ilias understood everything. The case report was given to Kargan Band, and Ilias dragged the girl into the bathroom. A neat, pretty girl soon appeared before the man, and he noticed she looked even more beautiful, but she was frightened by Ilias' actions. Leaping at the man while crying, she overwhelmed him and he fell. Ilias struggled because the girl refused to obey after she had previously bullied the man. At first, the guy wanted to take the girl to Maya. Ilias also told him he had to attend an awards ceremony for the capture of the robbers. He refused to take part. Ilias was unhappy with his decision. She grabbed him and would not let him leave the house. The unhappy girl wanted to know why the guy refused, but her tight grip hurt his shoulder. Ilias woke and released him. The man then told her it was only important for knights. He wanted to avoid drawing attention to himself. She should have understood his point that, as cranks, they drew too much attention. She couldn't pay attention to that because her partners could support her, and Ilias believed they could support each other too. He agreed since Cargo, Ban, and Ilias could support him, and told the girl to tone down her art a little because he'd only been in this world a week and needed time to figure out who he could trust and how much. Standing out would draw enemies, and he wanted to avoid that. It was simply his frugal cowardice. Ilya was stunned to hear about the cowardice. Having only just survived an attack by a bear and the slime, he could rely on Ilias but couldn't bring himself to trust fully since he had recently met a girl. Smiling, the man said Ilias was his most reliable person at the moment and then refused to participate. Ilias said Ragdor had instructed her to do it, but she had taken the man's opinion into account. A moment later, the man agreed, which surprised her. The man would have refused, but that would have damaged Ilias' prestige. She cared for him, so he wants to thank her. He then accused her of not telling him right away. After that, they went to Maya and soon arrived at the church, where Maya cast a spell on the white-haired girl. The girl managed to cast a spell on her. Ilias introduced herself to the girl and asked if she understood, and the girl did. The man still wasn't sure Maya had done everything correctly, but the girl was fine and did not get the muscle aches the man had. The girl realized the other girl's name was Ilias. Now she wanted to know the name of her savior. The guy realized he could think of what she would call him. The name was fine, but the girl could drop the formal titles. He was thinking when Maya suggested he tell her about the nickname Darling, but he ignored the suggestion. To help the girl learn to live independently, the man agreed to support and be responsible for her, and he decided she should call him master or teacher. After weighing her options, the girl decided to call him simply the master, and he was flattered by the name. He then asked Maya to teach her to keep her magic to herself, which she agreed to, and next he had to arrange clothes, food, and a place to live. That's why Cyrus came to the church. The girl was delighted to see the pretty girl and hugged her. The man called Cyrus when the girl was free. Ilias was upset that the man knew Cyrus's address, but the man defended himself, saying friends exchange addresses after all. The man asked Cyrus to make clothes for the girl. Clothing for half-humans was not sold in this city. She had experience making clothes. Cyrus accepted the man's request and attended the workshop with enthusiasm. Now they needed to teach the girl to speak. A spell from Maya's native speaker let her understand their language. The girl still had a lot to do. At this pace, she would not become independent. Their first priority was to learn the alphabet and the social rules. Both of them relied on Maya. The girl said the man had taught her to call Maya master. He said he could explain the laws of life, though he was actually an innovator in speech and the rules of this world, so he asked Maya to help them. Maya began to explain everything. Ilias grew bored watching. The man absorbed knowledge about this world diligently. Out of boredom, Ilias started practicing, and then she heard loud stomping. Cyrus ran up. The girl made clothes for the girl. Surprised by her speed, the guy was kicked out of the church the next moment. After a while, he was allowed to enter. Cyrus admired the clothes. That was her masterpiece. The girl wore comfortable clothes, an off-the-shoulder t-shirt, short shorts, and tall, comfortable boots. Everyone liked her, and Cyrus, seeing her white hair, thought black clothes would suit her. The man liked the outfit, but felt her legs were too exposed. Sarah had to sew extra fabric onto the shorts. The man was pleased with the clothes. Ilias also praised Sarah, and she was thrilled. Her design matched the fashion trend, but he felt she did not belong in this world. Maya reported it too, and she and the man agreed. He then told Sarah to sew clothes for Ilias next time and wanted to see what she would make for him. After paying her for the job, Sarah felt embarrassed to accept such a large sum. The man paid not just for the material, but for Sarah's skill. Sarah worried because she was not in sales. He was firm and offered advice, saying that if her hands trembled at such a large payment, she should have trained more. Everyone agreed she was skilled. Their words pleased her. The man admired Cyrus's skill. In a few hours, she not only came up with the design, but also finished the look with shoes and accessories. They left the church. A well-known tavern soon came into view. The girl caught a pleasant smell and went inside, excited. A lively crowd filled the room. The tavern owner noticed the man had brought a pretty companion. He asked the owner to bring them a drink. Ilias noticed more customers in the tavern. The man agreed, and soon he began thinking about the next stage, how to make a sweet dish. Ilias was not happy about his idea because she especially hated fruit. A minute later, a dish was placed in front of the girl. The man told her to repeat after him, and she stared at him intently as he showed her how to eat with a spoon. Soon the girl grasped the idea and picked up a spoon. Her hand trembled with the unfamiliar weight. Still, she managed to taste the dish. It pleased her. The others smiled at how much she enjoyed it. Soon she asked for more. They did not leave the tavern until evening. The man praised Ilias for staying calm. The girl became angry. He explained what a brawl meant. He realized he had a lot to teach her. Learning to fight was also important. First, she had to learn how to live. So a child who does not know letters or words can learn to live on their own. Then the man called to Ilias and spent a long time thinking about one thing. This is about the girl's name. In the village, everyone called her the cursed child. Ilias then asked for the words for black and white in his native language, but they did not fit her name. Ilias also recognized the word wolf in his native language, and to her it sounded beautiful even though it was a man's name, so they had to change it to wolf. The name felt strong yet soft and light, the sound pleasant, and the man liked it. From that day on he told the girl she would be called Uffy, and she said her name with curiosity, pleased with him as a bright smile lit her face. The company was glad to see Ulfa, and they soon found themselves near Ilias' house. He told Ulfa the house would be hers from that day on. Ulfa looked at him with admiration. Gathering her strength, she ran toward the house and joyfully entered her new home. From that day on, Ulfa, a child, began a new life that they both enjoyed. Meanwhile, the king learned that a tribe of demi-humans lived in the territory of these, something the people did not suspect, and much happened during the men's stay in this world. Merito learned the man had accepted the ceremony invitation and realized he would bring change to the country. Looking out the window, the king said his heart was pounding at the thought of meeting a beautiful aristocratic girl. Ragudo knew the king was joking as the young man climbed the stairs. Ulface's development moved quickly. He planned to handle everything but wasn't sure how far to go. Ilias was probably unhappy that he couldn't fully trust her. Sensitive to others' judgments, the girl kept her stress inside. Thinking Ilias's strength was unique, the guy avoided a direct approach. He stopped thinking about it. The oath incident will change how they deal with the opponents. That prospect did not please him. He tried to calm down and sort his thoughts. Listening to his heartbeat, he worked to steady himself. He calmed down because, as always, he will be in this place. To attend the award ceremony, the man asked John to find him clothes. After dressing, he stepped out to join the guests. John liked the outfit and thought it suited him. Ulf noticed that her master looked different. The man felt uncomfortable in the clothes. He looked every bit like a medieval aristocrat. The man stepped outside and saw the carriage approaching. Cargo had come to them. As usual, he donned his armor. Those were unusual, and the man assumed the armor was for the ceremony. But that was wrong because Haig still had to work hard to polish it, and the country put Ian in charge of trade with the demi-human tribe and the Az, so merchants must negotiate through him for now. Mediating negotiations with the demi-humans will earn the man a few % of the net profit from future trade with the tribe, and they soon arrived at the palace. Thanks to this, he was no longer unemployed. The ceremony will start soon. A man suddenly heard unpleasant rumors about a girl. The nobles disliked the king's subjects and thought the girl did not know her place. Silence fell as the king arrived. The man watched King Thi die for the first time. King Thi looked young for his position. The man felt King Thi's gaze on him. The award ceremony began as squads of knights were called forward. He kept thinking about the king's gaze and told himself he was imagining it. Finally, the name Ilya was called. The king thanked her for defeating the bandits and for her bravery. Applause filled the hall. The ceremony ended and the buffet began. The banquet hall was full of tables with all kinds of food. He enjoyed the dishes. Ilias noticed a man's silhouette in the crowd. After finishing her business, the girl told the man that Ragudo wanted to meet him, and the man then saw Ragudo with the king. Noticing him, the man introduced himself as Salvat Ragudo, thanked me for looking after a squad, but I denied it, and then the king cut into their conversation. Marido was a king. He pointed out that Ilias was brave but inexperienced, yet he could make her important. The king waited to see the man's reaction to his words. The stranger, according to the report, had dark hair and eyes. Marido had heard about his relationship with Ilias. Marido now wanted to ask him for a handshake. Having already spoken with his subordinates so they would not interfere, the king only wanted to know the man's identity and his next move. The man turned away and went to the buffet. The wanderer filled a plate and handed it to the king to taste, which made the king tense. Marido assumed the man took his handshake as a request for food, but the man gave him fruits that were hard to peel, and after he ate them, the king looked back only to see the man already heading for the banquet hall exit, leaving Marido staring in surprise. Stunned that the black-haired man simply walked away without paying him any attention, the king froze for a moment, then immediately followed him because he had finally found him and could not let him go. Marido had already prepared many ways to evaluate it. He did not want it to end so quickly. The man watched the fleeing king with a satisfied grin. Mardo was stunned and stared at the wanderer with wide eyes. The man knew the king wanted to play a little game with him, but he did not expect the king to follow. Marido realized the king was checking on him. The king laughed. He apologized for being curious. Just then, Ilias and Ragudo burst in on them. The man told the woman her acting was terrible. The king laughed louder, took a liking to the man and had borrowed him from Ilias, so they soon found themselves in the king's study where Marito smiled and said they could speak to him informally, and the situation quickly escalated. The king thanked the man, and because his knights were bound by chivalry, the bandits used them to their advantage. The man was surprised by the king's casual manner, but Ragudo told him not to worry, that was their king, and the man pointed out that luck was on their side at that moment. The king believed the man's wisdom allowed the knights to get information from the bandits, and Rachel defeated the bandit leader, and another man noticed he showed no pride because he believed taking advantage of people's weaknesses was not something to be proud of. He pointed out that it would have been better if the king had praised Ilias, who, like her father, was committed to following the knightly path and ready to face the consequences, and she accepted the man's offers. The man thanked the king for his stance toward the Black Wolf tribe. The king had helped ensure they were treated equally, though with his country's strength he could have easily subdued and controlled them. Hearing the man's words, the king laughed. Smiling, he said it was not worth discussing such dangerous matters. It could ruin his reputation as a wise king. The man felt awkward because of the king's action. He behaved like someone under extreme stress. The king enjoyed hearing stories about the man's world. First, he wanted to finish one thing. That was the man's signal to his subordinates. Then the knight pulled a worn notebook from his chest. Its cover marked Sample IV, Studies of the Blue Demon Lord. The man raised the topic the guy wanted to avoid most, but it mattered to them. The king knew the book was written in the language of the guy's world. He did not read it. That would put him in danger. Reading it would have made Grandpa Kargu his accomplice, and the man wanted to avoid that. The king understood, since research into resurrection magic was banned by an intercontinental agreement. If this country had a taboo as strict as Mijim, they would search the whole nation to eliminate him. He frowned. After all, it would have been eliminated even without being read, and if he had read it, he would have been destroyed on the spot. Meji's territory suffered the worst damage from the Demon Lord, leaving many areas barren wastelands, so people there are very sensitive to questions about the Demon Lord. The bandit leader's Dokla had been used as a destroyer by Magi's. The black-haired man was stunned by this information. Everything sounded dubious. If the book really contained research, it would be a worldwide problem, and he did not want to be involved, which is why the king wanted him to analyze the book. The king promised to keep him safe. The book was too important to them. The man wanted to know how much information the book contained. Only the king and Ragudo knew about it. Yugura and Maya were not informed. Sir Yugura's sacred place is in Magi's. Maya has been given the highest responsibility in Thighs. In fact, when they finish their assignment, they will be able to return to headquarters to conduct research. They likely already knew the book existed, and the man was shocked by that, but he shouldn't have been so upset since Maya wasn't a secret agent. Even if the man trusts her, he should not trust the people behind Maya and Uger. Meji did not report anything about this book. The king was worried that he might tell Rachel about it. Instead, he decided not to tell Ilias about it. Ilias' mother was Maya's best friend. If the man tells her, she will probably consult Maya about it. That is why the king wanted to find out whether the book was dangerous. The man was not thought. He calmed down and asked what the king wanted, and was told to translate the book into the language of this world, but a handwritten translation would be dangerous, so the king would store the book's information in his head. The king now wants the man to visit his castle regularly and translate the book for him. The man has already chosen the title, Consultant, for the person who will help them avoid suspicion. A man will serve as a minister. He will share knowledge of his world with the king. Others will see him as a court jester. Unhappy with the title, the wanderer thought information about his world could still be useful to them. He was a simple citizen with no special knowledge. The king did not expect anything, and the man only wanted to listen for pleasure. The wanderer accepted the king's decision. One thing still bothered him. He wanted the king to make some arrangements. After some explanation, the king thoughtfully accepted the wanderer's terms. Those terms were not complicated. The wanderer thanked the king for this. Then the wanderer held out his palm to the king. They shook hands afterward. Ragdor, aiming to establish a long-term business relationship, noticed the king enjoyed spending time with the man. Far more interesting than the other man had expected, he mentioned the tone he'd used with him, and Ragdor, remembering his king's casual tone, wanted to laugh. After seeing this, the king decided to always speak to the man privately like that, because it would give him a chance to rest and relax, and the other man then decided he wanted that man for himself, not just as a collaborator, but to serve their country. The man of royal blood drank and clearly wanted this man as his subordinate. Meanwhile, Ilias headed home and soon entered her house strangely. A stunning view opened before her. A young man and woman greeted her, each holding food. They thanked Ilias for his good work, and though their preparations were not finished, they wanted to start celebrating. Today the main character was Ilias, even though the conversation with the king was unexpected. The girl stared, stunned, at the table piled with food. Prejudice against Ilias will likely never disappear. The man wanted to congratulate her on behalf of everyone present. Then a speech of thanks was given in the house, directed toward the girl. Meanwhile, in a dark room, only a faint glow of dark energy lit the space. The demon asked his subordinate if they had found the recording. They had not found it yet. Every place he had used had been searched. That meant only one thing: someone had already taken them. The demon's subordinates were watching the borders of these to stop the book from being taken abroad. They also sent intelligence agents to search for her. The records would be found sooner or later, so they had to hurry. If the book leaked to the public, it would cause serious problems. If they discover a demon, the relationship will end. The man will become a burden and the demon will stop guiding him. The man with the mole by his eye thanked the red demon lord for his advice. A man used stones to make a small fire and put the food on it to cook, and soon it was ready. He realized time had flown, and it had been 10 months since he arrived in this world, and as he was about to eat breakfast, someone called his name, Shisho. Ulfi appeared. The girl greeted the man cheerfully. In truth, it was all a lie. He had been in this world for only 2 weeks. He focused on the white-haired girl. He learned everything very quickly. She no longer needed magic to communicate with others. Although she only knew simple words, she could already speak the language of this world. She also learned a few Japanese words. Itada kimisu, the word said before eating, was one of them. The man kept relying on Maya for mastery magic because he could not learn this world's language. A sleepy Ilias then came down to them. Ulfi greeted the girl. The man expected Ilya to be cheerful even in the morning. She was sleepy because she wore armor even at home. She needed to pay more attention to her public image. At the very least, she should have returned the greeting with a smile. Instead, she walked with a frown. She didn't think she could learn to smile naturally, but when the guy showed her his smile, she was shocked. Soon the group stepped outside. Ulf was getting used to people's suspicious looks. If she gets a bit more confident, she could go after a popular local girl from the animal race. The country also issued an official statement recognizing the demi-humans in TSA territory. Recently, he had seen several half-humans from the Black Wolf tribe near the city. The company wanted to enter the palace, so a man got a pass from Ragudo that let them meet Ragudo or Marido without any formalities. They soon arrived at King Marido's office. King Marido greeted them back. The man was busy filling out documents. They had to sit somewhere. While Marido finishes his paperwork at random, he prepares a place for them so they won't get bored waiting. The man felt like a blissful court jester. Ulfi suddenly heard weapons clanking in the distance. It was time to train. The girl wanted to defeat the hag. She moved toward the training area at lightning speed. He felt like a joyful court jester. Alpha heard weapons clanking in the distance. It was time to practice. She raced to the training area to prepare to defeat the hag. Meanwhile, the king finished filling out the documents. The man wanted students to be able to choose what they studied at school. To do this, he chose several candidates. The king got little support for raising educational standards because children were trained to be productive workers. The king liked the ideas from the man's world and could not imagine that more than 7 billion people lived there while the man was answering Marido's questions about his world. He answered questions about the population's political norms. After that, they discussed the reason for this. They decided to apply the policy in Theo's. Even if politics worked in his world, that doesn't mean it will work in others. The country has both a hereditary monarchy and a democratic electoral system. The main issue is deciding which suits it best. The king also wanted to learn about cultural development, especially cooking appliances. Previously, someone explained the rice cooker and the microwave oven to him. He showed the sketch to the king. The device would be useful if they could make it with magic. The problem was figuring out how it worked. The king knew they had to find an experienced magician he could trust. A loud clang of weapons drew his attention. Marido laughed and took a break. They moved to the window to watch the workout. Oph fought Ragdor. The girl easily bounced off the huge hammer. In response, she attacked the man with several weapons. The king watched the girl grow at a terrifying rate, yet she could not land a single blow on Ragudo's team. Experience and skill mattered here too. The man turned his attention to Ilias, who was on a completely different level. Not only was she an expert in combat, she had enormous magical power, and her unique body-strengthening magic let her deflect a spear with her body. The girl wasn't just a gorilla, she was a magical metal gorilla. Ilias noticed their gaze. She gave the man a gloomy look. The king invited the man to join them, but Ilias explained it to him unclearly. Ulfa could see the man did not have those powers. When Marido heard this, he burst out laughing. He offered him Ragudo. The king could also keep him company because the king was a man of many talents. The man refused. Marito then remembered Maya had asked him for something. She wanted to borrow some knights as guides to the villages of the TSA kingdom, so the king decided the man would go with them too. A messenger from the Ugra church headquarters will arrive to inspect the branch churches in every village. Marito chose Karga and Ilias as the guides. The king wanted the man to use this chance to visit the villages. The man was impressed that the wanderer understood how his world differed from this one. The best solution was to send him to investigate. He no longer had to worry about everything. The king had already announced the department's candidate would arrive for training. The man was relieved he wasn't called a court jester. Shortly after they left the palace, evening fell. The man, freshly bathed, went to the gym. Ilias was busy with his weapons. The girl wiped her sword with a cloth. Ulf was already asleep. She wanted to say good night to the man, but did not wait for him. Glad that Ulf had a busy day, he was then invited by Ilias to join their training, and Marito said the same, so he was not particularly happy with the offer, and Ilias still could not get used to the stranger addressing the king without any honors. The king himself told him to call him by his first name. In front of the others, he still had to watch his language. The man then fell silent, stared at the girl, and told her Marito had arranged a place for him to live. Needing to visit the castle every day, he decided to move closer, and the girl drooped for a moment when she heard it, though she tried to hide her sadness, and then he told her he had refused the king's offer. Next, the guy asked for her permission to stay in this house. She was stunned and wanted to know the reason for his refusal. The first reason was Ulfa. She had already become attached to Ilias, and he was the second reason. The guy was still getting used to this world. He still felt anxious about living in this country, and when the girl stared at him, dumbfounded, he frowned and an awkward silence settled in the room. The man left the room awkwardly. Ilias wanted to know what he meant, but he stopped her. The girl could take it any way she wanted. Ilias felt confused because she thought he wanted to rely on her. Blushing, she tried to calm herself. Locked in his room, he cited Alpha as one reason for his refusal and felt a little ashamed, so he avoided sentimental thoughts, and when he returned home and saw Ilias, he decided this kind of life was good. Outwardly, he acted like an adult, but he was still immature and depended on others, and although he should have been able to live alone in this world as he did in Japan, his heart was about to burst facing a dangerous situation. He convinced himself it would be a good experience. Before long, Ilias's presence would shape his life. She gave him advice, opportunities, and a place to live. That foothold helped him get used to this world. He still can't thank her because he's immature. This world was less comfortable than his, but it had advantages. Most people here lived honestly, even the bandits, and after he got information from them, Cargo said the robbers were destroyed following the liquidation of the cola. One of the robbers told him he was now calm about his destruction, and he thanks the man for that. People in this world lived their lives sincerely. Innocent, pure-hearted people were easy to be around. Choosing a quiet life freed him from negative emotions and made him feel like he was in the countryside. However, the man wanted to try to find a way back to his world. He also kept in mind the possibility of staying in this world. What mattered most to him was a quiet life. The next day they were near the church, and Ulf happily announced she was ready. Maya did not expect the man to be the candidate. The man told her it was a sham, and the king told him to broaden his knowledge. Yufei will walk this path with him too. The man asked about the messenger of the church. At that moment, a voice announced she was the messenger. The messenger was a pretty girl named Lacra Self who welcomed the candidate and wished him success in their cooperation. A man met a woman and asked her name. She suddenly took his hand and introduced herself, blushing. Her name was Lacquer. Lucra liked the man's odd look, with black hair, dark eyes, and only a faint trace of magic. The girl asked where he came from, and he said he was a wanderer. Those years were the first time he lived on the continent where he settled. He was born with only a few magical powers, so he was not good at physical labor either. Suddenly, the girl noticed something. She noticed the man was accompanied by a spirit. The spirit came from Maya's possession technique. He then shifted the conversation to the Black Wolf tribe. Blackrow saw Ulfi and realized she was from there, and the man told Blackrow that Ulfi already knew their language well, but uses that technique to communicate with other members of the Black Wolf tribe. Then the man told her a friend had discovered the village, and he was only helping him. The girl was amazed. Blushing, she noticed the young man was very diligent. The wanderer returned the favor by praising Lacraya. With a fake smile, he told her he was flattered to work with her. Lekrog giggled at his words. Even though the man was smiling, he felt the gloomy stares of the other girls. Ilias interrupted their conversation. The girl wanted to take Lekra to another place. After Lekra and Ilias walked away, Maya approached him. She admired his cleverness. He realized he should not reveal his past or origin. Then he asked Maya if she had noticed anything strange in his speech. The girl sensed no lie in his words because he had not lied, and like Maya, Lakra is the spiritual face of the Uyghur religion, so the man suspected she could sense lies too. They are better than others at sensing magical power. They likely notice its fluctuations and can therefore spot lies. Seeing all the innermost things in the heart would be their advantage, and the gloomy-looking man was considering their method. When he found himself in this world, he settled in the thighs without doubt. Using Maya's technique, you can also communicate with the Black Wolf tribe, guide them with the truth, and loop its wording so even Maya and others do not notice the trick. Maya realized the man had prepared his answers in advance, expecting those questions, and since he was hiding even the smallest secret from her, he used the technique carefully to avoid arousing suspicion. Trying to change the subject, the man said he had spoken from the heart about Lakra's beauty, and Maya immediately frowned at that. After a while, they were in the carriage. They were moving farther from the capital of Tais. Wolfie sat happily on the wagon roof, enjoying the warm breeze. Cargo drove the cart. Inside the cart, people studied the map. After a while, the wind picked up. Ulfie gripped the wagon's fabric to keep from being blown away. They soon reached the place they needed. A calm, blessed silence greeted them. Lacra and Cargo were talking with the village headman. Surveying the area, the observer saw residents using cranes to fetch water, which meant there was running water, but it depended on the location, and supplying even one village with enough water was difficult. He then noticed a watchtower near the village and was surprised, and when Ilias said it was to guard against monsters, he was shocked. The black-haired man grew a little afraid when monsters were mentioned, because in this world, monsters existed alongside demons. The man had never seen them. Ilias said the monsters came from another world. They had once been ruled by demon kings. This affected regions rich in magic. There was also an otherworldly world in Thais. The entrance stood near the mountain, belonging to the Black Demon King's destroyer. When he heard this, he realized it was the nickname of that slug. Kargu said that sometimes a wyver would leave the mountain. Most magical creatures visiting that place were controlled by that slime. After hearing the man's story, Cargo thought he was very lucky that day. The hag's tale made clear why the wyverns started appearing there. With the Demon King destroyed, Tom had too few enemies. A while later, they climbed back into the carriage and set off. Lekra was overjoyed because the inspection had gone so well. The girl thought about the award from Uyghur's main religious administration. The Uyghur religion takes its name from the hero who saved the world. Demons born from resurrection magic threatened the world. The hero enlisted divine aid to defeat them. Yoga's teachings are the hero's instructions for future generations. This sacred place stood in Midges, a monarchy where real power rests with the Pope. The King of Majest negotiates with him and tells the people the news because that is his role. Medes did not forgive anyone who violated the taboos. Uyghurianism was directly involved. The devil, a puppet of the mages, and the taboo book were all linked to Uyghurianism. The people who drove Dukalu were Uyghurians. He realized the case was becoming increasingly dangerous. A while later, they found themselves in another village. Ulfie looked around the village carefully. Excitedly, she told her master that the cows in this village were smaller than those in the previous village, and he began joking about them. They explored the villages and, after inspecting them, continued on their way. Evening came and it grew too dark outside to continue. The company stopped at villages along the way and decided to spend the night in the village church. The village head lured the hag to his house. The gray-haired man turned out to be very popular in remote villages. The nuns led everyone to their rooms. The man went into the room where he would spend the night. He then planned to sort the documents to find a candidate for secretary. The man was absorbed in paperwork. He concentrated on filling out the document. Then someone knocked on his door. Without asking, he let me into his room. It turned out to be Lacra. The girl apologized for coming so late. Unable to sleep, she took a short walk and noticed the light was still on in his room. He was stunned by her appearance, though her clothes were not very revealing, and her kala highlighted her curves, while a low neckline made her look very seductive. The man immediately calmed and said in a steady voice he was finishing his paperwork. The woman appreciated his diligence and asked to see the documents. He did not refuse. She was surprised he had written down every detail, and he explained that beginners should record every circumstance so they do not miss anything important. LeCroix paused, then said in a seductive voice, "With a secretary like him around, people can stay calm." He laughed at her words and was about to thank Lacra when she suddenly lay down on him, pressing her whole body and turning his head toward her so he would look at her. The wanderer panicked about the situation. The girl gently stroked his face while LaCroix sat completely on the guy's lap. She then said she had come for advice. The inspection served another purpose. The girl stroked his body. Then she took his chin and looked at him intently. She told me she was looking for a book and asked where to find the one that explains the resurrection technique. The man immediately frowned. Suddenly he stood up from his chair and walked to the window. The man leaned against the wall and sighed loudly. Lacroix watched him with a worried, confused expression. The man knew everything, and from the start he and the king assumed Laker's goal was to find what was left behind. This was the first time anything like this had happened to him since he arrived in this world, and Lacra's impatience startled him, leaving him upset that the girl changed the subject to the book too quickly. That's exactly what he told Lacrae. The girl was stunned when she heard him. It meant her seduction magic had not worked. He agreed, saying he had been tempted by her actions and outfit. Realizing this, she blushed immediately. Embarrassed and in tears, she wanted him to forget everything that had happened. He never even considered doing that. That made him glad she had. Lacra grew more embarrassed, tears streaming down her cheeks as she couldn't understand why her magic didn't work, so she forced herself to pull together and keep going. The man thought her seduction magic was layered over the opponent's head, and Lacra agreed. By locking eyes, the charm cut through the opponent's magic and changed it. The secretary told her he had little magic for that, so her seductive charms would not work on him. At the lowest level in this world, he was a magician who was happy at first, but when most healing magic failed to affect him, he realized his situation was not so joyful. Lacroix eagerly asked the secretary to pour her magic power directly into him, but at the thought she blushed immediately. The man suggested she simply seduce him. The girl refused and he was disappointed. Lacrae sadly accepted that she had not completed the task. Afterward, they put all the facts together. To prevent the Demon King's return, the Agura General Directorate classifies all documents about Taboo and the Demon King. Until then, as a puppet of Medges, he stole one book named Sample 4, Studies of the Blue Demon Lord. My artist requested documents about a one-armed man who can control resurrected people, and they discovered there had been a hint about him earlier. Failing to find the book, they suspected Maya and secretly sent a skilled nurse to uncover the truth. Confidently, the girl talked about her abilities, saying she could use high-level magic and was an expert in exorcism, but her recent failure was especially ridiculous for a guy. Lucra was confused. Trying to justify herself, she said she had treated him well, but her haste had put her in this position. Lakar was overwhelmed by the revelation. She had ruined her secret mission. The man said she only needed to gather the information openly. Having an explanatory note from the main department, Maya could not have hidden the book, or her activities would have been suspended. She understood everything. He just wanted to go to bed, but a crying Lacra stopped him, thinking he would help her. When the guy asked Lacra about seduction, she tried to make him forget it and soften him up, but he stayed unapproachable and still agreed to help the girl. The Wanderer had grown tired of the girl's company. He refused to share any details about the book. When Lecria suddenly asked about it, he asked Lecria to describe how the book looked. Lecria explained, and then the man said he had never read such a book in thighs. Posing as someone curious about the book Lacrosse said contained magical powers, he claimed that placing a barrier would make the powers appear. That is why she put up barriers in the village churches. Lacroix was surprised by the man's words. The man then explained to her that Alfie had told him about it. Lacra remained calm because the barrier harmed no one, and if its magic met the books, she would feel the resonance even from far away, so she planned to set up barriers all over the Thai's country. He asked her about the permit to install barriers. Lacra wanted him to help her get it, but he was only a candidate for secretary. He had no such rights and could only consult the king. Lacrae had had enough of that. The man said the girl should be more responsible. Seeing his amount of magic, Lacrata thought she could handle him, which annoyed him, so he formed a partnership with her, and she noticed he began speaking to her without respect, and although she was older, he did not care. In Medj, at Uyghur's main sanctuary, Pope Upero sat opposite Archbishop Ukka. Ukka sent Lacrat to return the book. Dad remembered the girl had already mastered exorcism magic at such a young age. Her achievements are undeniable. Talented in some areas, she was completely incompetent in many others. Papa Yukaro did not understand why she was chosen. Akka said with a laugh that if they appointed an inspector as absent-minded as Lacra, Maya would lower her guard. The archbishop secretly sent another person. The gray-haired man had already sent Jesus's subordinates to me there. As long as Lacrae remains clumsy in public, their capable subordinates will seize the book. That was their clever plan. Had the plan been clever, there would have been no comments. They should have avoided actions that might damage their relationship with thighs. Still, Yuka was relaxed. After the conversation, the humming man slipped away. Confident his plan was perfect, he was startled when his pendant lit up and he realized it was a report from Lacra. He hid and moved to an empty spot. Yuka froze when he learned Lacra had told the secretarial candidate everything, and at the same time someone was approaching him, as Lacra said the man would help her search for the book. The gray-haired archbishop relaxed. He was pleased the girl had gained a worthy ally. The man with the mole under his eye smiled at their conversation. He called out to Archbishop Uku and asked about Lacra's message. The white-haired man looked surprised to see the priest. A moment later, he fell under the man's spell and told him about Lacra. Things were progressing much better than expected. Better than his trained subordinates, Lacra might find the book faster than they will. Frowning at the words, the man stayed focused on success. The priest then approached the archbishop and handed over the document, asking permission to add more people to help. Calmly, the archbishop accepted the document and signed it. After the permit was signed, the priest left the premises. It was unclear who could still be under the man's spell. When he left the room, the spell on the archbishop vanished. Yuka could only stare blankly out the window. The man couldn't remember the recent meeting with the priest. Soon the man reached the palace. In the study, he told King Marito what had happened. The king was pleased with the report. They carried out a thorough inspection. By chance, the man began cooperating with Lacra. The king did not object, and they should have used it. The wanderer stood up from the sofa. He told the king that Lacra was too distracted, so sending someone else to investigate made sense, and merchants and adventurers might be hiring mages as mercenaries. The black-haired man asked King Marito about that very book, wanting to know what the king planned to do with it, and the king, realizing time was running out, said they should begin deciphering it right away. A man sat on a rock, lost in thought, so I didn't pay much attention to the others while Ulfi and Lacra are trying to sort out the magic items, and Ilias was keeping them company. Lacra approached the man and said she had finished the preparations. I wanted to know what to do next. He was stunned by her question and assumed she was asking about the book. After he reported receiving permission to install a barrier outside the castle, Lacra could start at the gate and gradually extend it along the walls to encircle the city. This will buy them time against Lacra. To keep the search from finding the book, this is the only way you can help. The man worried that someone else besides Lacra had been sent to find the book. He should have stayed alert. Ulf and Ilias watched the man interact with Lacra. That night they noticed they had become close friends. Ulf told her the man was thoughtful, like when he took her from the village. Ilias thought Lacra was thinking too. But Lacra was not thinking about anything. Ilias was briefly embarrassed by this. He told Lacra to explore the Dokulu cave he used as a base, then asked about her ability to fight monsters. Lacra was confident in her skills, but the man did not trust her, so she had to prove herself when a cube-shaped barrier appeared above her. The shield used lacquer for defense. Weak attacks could not even scratch it. The man ordered Ulfa to strike the barrier with full force. The white-haired girl stepped up to Lacra and hit the barrier with all her might. When the dust settled, the barrier stood before Ulfa intact and unharmed. She couldn't even scratch it. Lacra was proud of her strength. Ulfa was upset and holding her sore arm from the impact. A man tried to calm her. Ilias then approached them. The girl also wanted to test the strength of Lacra's shield, and Lacra didn't mind. Reacting to Ulf's attack, Ilias put more power into her own attack. Ilias swung her sword at Lacra's barrier. The attack's force partially broke the barrier and left cracks across it. Lacra was stunned as the blow's enormous force sent Ulfa a short distance away. Ilias realized the barrier was strong. If Ilias did not try hard, breaking through would be difficult. Lacra proved her strength with that. Even though Ilias didn't count, no ordinary man could break her barrier. The wanderer silently picked up the stone from the ground. Using a shovel, he dug a small hole in the ground. Next, he tossed the contents at the girl's barrier. Lacra looked up at the spot. A cluster of insects clung to the top of the E-barrier. Horror hit the girl. Now she can't escape the barrier because Lacra can't move it. Ilias were often amazed by the guy's actions. The man asked Lacra to reshape the barrier, but she couldn't. He then asked if wind magic could blow the bugs away, but she couldn't use it while keeping the barrier up. The man sighed and warned that using poisonous vapor against the enemy would get her into trouble. Lacra was desperate and needed help getting rid of the insects on the barrier's roof. Ilya used wind magic to remove them. Lacra was free now. The girl was shaken by the man's cruelty. He did not feel guilty because he said he had exposed her weak spot. Ilias and Ulfa were taken aback by his words. As time passed, evening fell on the street, and in an alley a hooded man walked calmly toward the place they needed, reached the wall, used magic to pass through it, and entered the room. The man ignored the simple, tidy room and touched the magic ball. His master expected a report. He reported that Lacra and the other man had set up a barrier around the castle walls and gates, and that she had also investigated the base. His master saw that the girl had indeed gained a dependable ally. The man waited for further orders. The priest with the mole under his eye asked for more details. Their main goal was to locate the book. The priest's subordinate told him Lacra's ally looked strange, with black hair and dark eyes, and sensed no magic in him, so the priest realized the man had a demonic appearance, which was alarming given their situation. The man also reported the guy's connection to Elias. The priest told his subordinate to be extremely vigilant and sent more comrades to join him so they could combine forces and be ready, and the man accepted his master's instructions. A priest with long hair stood in the study. His palm rested on the magic ball. The priest considered what to do next. The Pope scolded the archbishop. When cooperating with another country, they had to explain their reasons and the circumstances. Their actions could worsen relations with them. The Pope ordered Uke to contact King Theus. The gray-haired man must recall the mercenaries he sent. The archbishop accepted the Pope's instructions. The man thought he should have contacted Lacra and the mercenaries, but when the mercenaries were mentioned, he realized he did not know who they were. Someone suddenly called out to him, and Yuka was glad to see his friend. The man refused to listen to the old man's speech. In a gloomy voice, he put the archbishop back under his spell, ordered Yuke to hand the mercenary problem to him, and Yuka will focus only on Lacra. Meanwhile in the capital, the thieves walked down the alley. He met his friend and greeted Gadsden with a smile. The old man was not surprised by his appearance. Gadsden had no home in Theas, homeless and always wandering the city, so he knew what was going on and kept an eye out for any strangers showing up. Buying him a drink can get you useful information. The man sometimes finished her off that way. Gadsden reported no changes in the city. The old man thanked him for the delicious drink. A man sat beside Gadsden and warned him that dangerous people might appear, but Gadsden did not believe him. The wanderer did not want Gadsden to get into a dangerous situation, then threw him a coin. Gadsden accepted the coin gladly. Gadsden began packing up. Gadsden had exactly what he wanted. The man will listen to Gadsden's chatter until the guy's money runs out. The guy wanted to know the old man's wishes. The man with the big hair said he worked in farming. He used the man's money to work the farm. Gadsden wanted to share any good harvest with him. Hearing this, he smiled and looked forward to it. Gadsden said goodbye to him. The next morning, an urgent message arrived from La Crosse. Medj told her to explain everything to the King of Thies. Seeking cooperation in the search for the book, the man hurried to Mordo for advice. The king just laughed. Lockwell had reported everything without hiding a single detail. The girl was naive. Soon Marino and the other man entered the room. Ragudo waited for them there. A man handed them special suits. The king realized the Pope was shocked when he heard this. This could become a stumbling block between the countries. They began to put on a suit. They realized they could not buy any more time. Before long, everyone was fully dressed in costumes. Later, they will return the book by pretending they found it in a treasure chest. After that, they opened the door with a magic key. They opened it and found a room with a magic circle on the ceiling. A forbidden book lay on the table. They had built the room so the book's magic would not leave traces on them. The king believed the man could decipher the book overnight. He didn't deny it and was ready for this. He refused to accept complaints from King Marito from now on. They began decoding the book. As they read further, they were not pleased with the information. During a short break, he realized the book was a complete disaster for this world. The hieroglyphs and notes were old and hard to read, and although the demon lord lived more than 500 years ago, the dates did not match the records because movements between parallel worlds caused inaccuracies. The chief problem was the book's content. The mages were not really aware of what it contained. If they could decipher it, the religion of Ujer would send all its forces to retrieve it. One man offered to return the book before it was too late and claimed they had not been involved. The king agreed, but Ragudo disagreed. Only a sigh escaped him, because the book held information that could cause trouble for people, and he had just come across a shocking detail. Marito was told the dangerous information, because if Ugurianism had known it, they would already have destroyed the book. A man read an excerpt from the page in a gloomy voice. At the same time, Marito and Ragudo froze in shock, amazed by what they heard. Outside, it was the dead of night. 2 moons lit the area brightly. Gazin walked down the alley enjoying a drink he'd been given and found the man strange because he always brought good drinks and treated him like an equal. Just as Getsin was about to move on, a sudden sound made him stop and listen. The old man remembered that the grandfather who had lived in the house had been killed long ago, which meant someone had broken into an empty house, so Gadsden wanted to drive the burglars off by shouting. The man paused briefly, remembering the warning that dangerous people might appear, but God's aunt had no time to move away and was attacked. The priest's subordinates were annoyed by the damage he caused, but they didn't care because he was just a homeless tramp. To avoid exposing the old man's murder, they staged it as an accident. Then the mercenaries left the house. The king refused to hear the information from the book, and none of them wanted to know her. Ragdor trembled with fear and panic over the whole situation. He thought bringing the book back was a bad idea. Marita then suggested he tell Yugura's clergy that the book had been decrypted. That could mean he would be eliminated. Marito defended himself, saying his duty was to care for the future of the TSA people. He said that was why the man had to do it, but he did not agree with this. After a while, they drank tea. Everyone was in deep thought. No one wanted a forbidden book near them. The man awkwardly realized he was dealing with a troublesome matter. It would be good. If the book's contents were fiction, the wanderer asked about the mercenaries and thieves. Searching for the book's origin and history, they could not get details about the participants because Marito refused to share them to protect the man's safety. He didn't care. He would give everything away before the torture began, and they could do nothing about him knowing the book's contents. They planned to use oblivion magic, but the man did not have enough energy to cast the spell, so Tom could only learn about the mercenaries. The king understood the man's situation but could trust them. The wanderer did not trust anyone willing to hand him over to the enemy, and Marito could only introduce him to one of the mercenaries. The mercenary was already standing behind the man. The wanderer did not even feel him approach. He touched the wanderer's shoulder. He was about to turn around, but the king's shout stopped him. After all, Tom shouldn't have known the mercenary's identity. The wanderer had been frightened by the mercenary's sudden appearance. The mercenary who guarded and escorted the king used magic to hide his presence and keep the king safe. He was the most capable man in the ice, and Marito felt completely safe with him. The man claimed he had been falsely destroyed in the line of duty, and Marito made him a personal employee. The mercenary agreed to this. The mercenary had been watching the man constantly, so he trusted Tom, and when the man caught the king off guard at the buffet, the mercenary wanted to kill him but held back. During the recent collision, the man intended to do this but changed his mind. The information frightened him, and he could not tell if the other person was joking. Knowing magic, the mercenary could dodge stones falling from the ceiling. If his appearance was revealed, he would have to kill everyone, so the man shared everything he knew about the mercenaries. The king was calmly sipping his tea when he noticed something. Marito saw the man's gloomy face after talking with his mercenary. After that, the man left the palace. He watched the dawn after a night spent gathering information about the book and other matters. Ilias suddenly called to him. The girl went on patrol early that morning. She noticed he had become busier. Ilias heard he had been at the castle all night, and she believed he was with Lacra. The man feared this would cause unnecessary misconceptions. He could not explain the book's details but could talk about Lacra. He reported that Lacra had come to these to find a book stolen by Decola. The girl was glad. He apologized to her because this had been a complete secret to her. Ilias was lonely and sad, but he should not have broken his promise. The man realized Ilias felt lonely without him. Suddenly embarrassed, she assumed he and Lacra shared a secret and felt isolated. Then he pointed out she was still lonely. Ilias was embarrassed by his words. She told Tom to be quiet, and Ulf was worried too. The man realized Ulf was more worried about Ilias, because when someone you love is upset, she cannot settle. A voice called to Ilias. Surprised, he saw that something had already happened that morning and realized someone had been killed. Drawn to the items in the alley, he spotted a bag he knew. Stunned, he ran to the dead body and, in shock, recognized his friend Gadsden. The girl said the men had been drinking heavily and hit the wall hard. They also noticed a book on agriculture that had fallen out, and the man only recently found his life's purpose. The wanderer picked up the bag with the drink. He didn't think the man's death was caused by drinking so much. The flask still held the drink he had given him. Grateful, the man only drank a little. But that small amount could not stop his condition from getting worse. Ilias noticed the man was thinking, and the wanderer learned that Gadsden's body would be taken to Maya's church and wanted to go with them too. A witness said there were no docs in the man's liquidation. It appears he was eliminated by someone. Although Gadsden fell, his arm was not injured, so they should investigate. They soon reached the church. The man waited for the examination result while Ilias examined Gadsden's body. The examination finished quickly. The girl said sadly that Gadsden had been killed deliberately, since his neck was broken. When the man heard the investigation's verdict, he immediately frowned, his dark, empty eyes fixed on nothing, and Ilias was startled to see him. Seeing the man's condition, she grabbed his arm and felt panic pounding in her chest, and he said in a flat voice he was heading to the castle to consult Marito, while Ilias offered to help her. Ilias did not want to drag the girl into this, but she had already stepped in. The wanderer did not want to burden her with debt, and he refused to stay silent. If she stays involved, she will regret it. Ilias told him it was better to regret something together than to have him do it alone. He had no reply. He said she should not have gone so far, but Ilias decided for herself whether it had been worth it. Then he said she should have persuaded him to do it, and she drew her sword at the same moment. Ilias waited for the other man to calm down and give up, since he had vented his emotions, and now found himself in a position where he had to agree with the girl. They had to get to the castle before they heard from Lacra. Ilias was relieved. Soon they were in Marito's office. The king awkwardly pointed out that Ilias was there. Then the man said the woman wanted to go into business, and he couldn't persuade her otherwise. The king said he could simply leave her. The wanderer did not do that because he thought it was better to include her than to break ties and leave her. The king said the problem was serious and troublesome. Her choice could have cost her a close friendship. Everything was at stake, he said, not only her relationships with acquaintances, but also her bond with the wanderer. Ilias stayed calm. If it happened, it meant they could do no more. Her determination blocked everything else, so the girl was willing to give up her connections, and the king knew he could not overcome her stubbornness. That's why I was told to bring the man in charge, since he was to blame for this. The man just sighed and wanted to start a conversation. The girl raised her hand to ask him questions. The man then told them La Croque could be eliminated. Ilias raised her palm with lightning speed. That made him afraid. The girl, however, was even more frightened by the conversation. The man decided to explain everything step by step, starting with the Ugurians who believed in the Demon King, and Ilias raised her palm again, annoyed because she didn't know that either. So the man had to begin at a point Ilias could understand. He soon ended his explanation by saying they had deciphered the book. Ilias still could not understand why they would eliminate Lekrak. The Ugur clergy aimed to return the book and settle doubts about Mayan. Lacra wasn't the only one entrusted with such a mission. Other scouts might be hiding in the city, but Meiji's call for cooperation didn't mention this. The scouts hid their abilities and acted as mercenaries, and they most likely killed that man this morning, but time was the problem. Archbishop Yuka gave Lacra direct orders and also depended on a superior's assessment. Only Papa Yukaro stood taller than him. To avoid straining relations, he asked for their cooperation. Gazin was destroyed after they promised to move quietly and peacefully. The mercenaries answer to another boss, a member of Ugur's clergy who opposes Pope Euparo's will. Their target is a book. Right now only Lakrik can get that book. The enemies don't intend to return it to the Magis. They plan to intercept and take her away, so they will have to get rid of Lakrik. They had reached the most dangerous part of the conversation. The enemies already knew the book's contents, so they wanted it badly. The resurrection technique was not described in it. The records detailed the Demon King. Creating him was the strictest taboo. This book describes the birth of a Demon King through rebirth magic, nicknamed the Blue Demon King, and observations of him. Alias was shocked by the news. The man said the book contained a lot of information about the Demon King. The woman briefly said he might not have mentioned it, then reconsidered. Papa Euparo and his people probably cannot read the book. To avoid leaking any information about the strictest taboo, an interpretation would not help Lacra. Still, the book originally belonged to Mejez. Only Meji knew about this book, and even Papa Yukaro did not know its contents. Some Ugurians know about the Demon King's affairs and will reveal themselves soon. Ilias realized they were talking about believers in the Demon King. The flood of information gave the girl a momentary headache, and the man repeated that some Ugur clergy hire mercenaries independently and are looking for a book. Ilias finally understood everything. The man was upset about the time he'd spent, and the king just laughed. Marito then asked about the next steps, and the man had an idea. Moving to a corner with the others, he whispered his plan. The man agreed. Deep anger over his acquaintance's destruction drove him, and he felt it had to be done for revenge. Calm and collected, the king assigned the task to the man. The wanderer then called to Ilya and wanted to know if she could handle it. Suddenly the girl thrust her sword in and said she would, for his sake, deliver results beyond his expectations. The man accepted her offer in a gloomy tone. As he left the office, he said he would reveal their plan. Seeing the man, the girl felt a wave of sadness. Seeing Gadsden's body changed him. He shifted to the side of his personality he had been hiding from them. Because the girl lived with the man, I thought I knew him. Yet he showed both justice and evil at the same time. Now the king was restraining him, and Ilias did not understand where or how the king was directing him. Marito was a king, not a knight. The girl did not know which side of the man's personality the king liked. She could not bear to look into his dark, empty, gloomy eyes. She did not want him to see the world through those eyes, so she should not leave him alone. Following Yuka's instructions, the girl set up a barrier near the castle. Although her spells didn't work as planned, Lacra was still glad. Suddenly the girl saw the man who had been waiting for her. Lacra wanted to know why she had been summoned. The secretary meant to tell her where the book was. It was in the castle. At first the girl did not understand which book the man meant. A moment later, she remembered the task she had been given. Lacroix was relieved to have found the book, and the girl no longer doubted him. He told her the book was written in a language not of this world. It also described a resurrection technique. She thought the book could not be decoded, and since the diagrams and drawings could reveal the resurrection technique, she stayed calm when the man mentioned the illustrations. The crowd grew worried at once. The man deliberately held back from interfering. They would give her the book, but first they had to give something to Archbishop Yuka. A man said there was a chance to translate the book's text in these, but it turned out to be impossible. They don't seem to have much technical knowledge, and that was not the only problem. The book lists other taboos. The man told her the king had hired him for his skill in deciphering that language. Lacroix's own ability confirmed he was not lying. They also needed Archbishop Yuke's opinion and, if possible, Pope Euparos. If the archbishop or pope refuse to cooperate, they will immediately give the book back to them. At midnight by the fountain, he will be waiting for their answer and will bring a book no matter what they decide. The king also knew about it. Lacquer was saddened by the news. She left to make an urgent call to her superiors. Clerics can see through lies, so they did not reach the truth. Excessive and unjustified suspicion is foreign to them. The problem is their trust was easily won. If Lacrab passes his words to the archbishop, they will reach the gray cardinal working behind the scenes. The man with the gloomy expression waited for the moment the great cardinal would fall into their trap, confident in his plan, while the mercenary priest watched, and when they learned the book would be handed over at midnight, the priest ordered them to get rid of the girl and take the book. The long-haired man also pointed out the other's ruined state. If the lacquer survives, it will be forgiven. That won't work with a man. The priest also wanted to take brains from their bodies. The mercenary followed his master's orders. Meanwhile, the long-haired man thought about the black-haired man. It proved useful, since things would take an interesting turn if he were an earthman, and the priest then began reporting to the Red Demon Lord. At midnight the man waited with Ilias and Ulf for Lacroix to appear, and the mercenary knew the guards would cause trouble because he had only 4 subordinates. Because Ilias was one of their top 5 knights and had also defeated Doklu, the leader decided not to attack openly. The beastman posed no problem. Her magic was strong, but she was too inexperienced, so they could dull her feelings and overcome her. The man was ordinary and easy to destroy. The mercenary leader saw Lacra as the main problem, and though many called her absent-minded, she fought differently and proved a real threat in battle. If Lacra and Ilias act together, they will have to retreat. To stop that, numbers 1 and 2 will distract Ilias while the rest eliminate Lacra. After proving the book was genuine, he waited for a reply to his request. The girl was ordered to refuse his offer and return the book, which he calmly accepted. Confused but aware of the book's danger, Lacroix decided to return it anyway because he did not want to harm relations with the mages in the clergy, and he was saddened by this when a distant sound came from afar, so Ilias went to check its source. The mercenary realized it wasn't them. Ilias rose from her seat, which worked in their favor. The man then ordered number 1 to go to Ilias and sent the others to Lacrae. As he moved to hand the book to the girl, it slipped from his palm. The enemy mercenary leader saw their chance to strike. While the others were distracted by the book, they planned to destroy Lacra. Nearly the whole mercenary group aimed their weapons at Lacrae. Afe noticed and got ready. In the next moment, Ilias's sword attacked them. Instantly, Ilias appeared beside the men and attacked the mercenaries. She sent one flying into the house. Some managed to dodge her attack, but one was destroyed. Lucra froze, not understanding what was happening. A man lifted her and ordered her to quickly create a barrier. At the same moment, a cubic barrier rose, covering her and the man. They managed to fend off the attack. It was a close call. Lacroix felt embarrassed by being so close to him. Realizing this, the man set the girl down and apologized, while the leader of the enemy mercenaries laughed. He could hardly believe that Ilias had stopped a surprise attack by 5 people from so far away. It was not a problem because she already knew when they would attack. She decided they would all attack Lacra if she could create the chance. A man watched the proud girl. Even though she had not devised the plan, the mercenary leader praised it. Still, as before, he needed a resurrection technique. The man realized they were mercenary mages. Lacra could not understand why her parents wanted her dead. Yuka would not do that. The Wanderer told her someone was working behind the scenes and that an unknown party had sent mercenaries to destroy it. Lacra was shocked and had no idea who could be responsible. Ilias dropped into a fighting stance. The girl believed only 3 mercenaries remained. To their surprise, the 4th mercenary survived her attack. She was annoyed she could not hurt them much, even though they were sent flying hard enough that the blow could not be called weak. The mercenary leader thought they were in a good position. Lacro being trapped in her barrier worked in their favor, so he ordered everyone to attack the beast woman and Ilias. Ilias didn't think 3 people could stop her. The leader agreed, but they would not attack her openly. At the same moment, a huge barrage of hidden strikes fell on the girl, and she could only fend off the many blows with lightning speed. Ilias noticed the mercenaries had used magic to escape. Suddenly, someone attacked La Cruz's barrier, and the girl reinforced it. She needed to keep the barrier up, because without it, the man could be destroyed. The attacks kept coming. Ulf dodged them easily, but her poor vision made it hard. Lacroix worried for her and saw in horror that the blade was poisoned, while the man showed no concern. Lacroix was surprised. The man wasn't lying, but his gloomy expression was terrifying. The wanderer noticed his feelings beginning to mirror his thoughts, so he relaxed, smiled, and told the girl to calm down again. Ulfe dodged their attack but was already exhausted. Feigning surrender to the mercenary, she immediately began gathering magical power. Ulfa gathered her magic and pretended to give up as a huge stream of energy hovered around her, leaving the mercenary stunned by the girl's magical power. Ulf called out the technique her master had taught and then pointed her fist at the mercenary, who did not consider her an equal opponent. Ulfa lowered her palms. The man moved to strike with an open hand, but she only clapped. A huge bang sent the mercenary flying. Lekra watched the fight in surprise. The man remained calm. Ulf's trick wasn't a trick at all. It was just a clap in your palm that put a lot of magical power into it. While Maya lectured on releasing magic, a mosquito flew in front of Ulfa, who had built up magical power in her palms, and she tried to destroy it by clapping her hands. The outcome was stunning. There was no damage, but everyone was scared. Even Ilias froze for a moment. It will easily disable an ordinary person. Stunned by the cotton, the mercenary froze as Ulfa moved toward him. The trembling man tried to stop her, but the girl jumped into the sky. Waving her legs, she shouted that Ulta would win, and then kicked her opponent. Offal landed safely on the ground while the defeated assassin lay motionless below, and she clenched her fists in triumph and announced that victory was hers. Killer tensely asks his comrades why they are losing to this nobody. Ilias points his sword at him, and in a threatening tone asks whether he means Ulf is a non-entity. Ilias says Ulf is a rough diamond now, but already very strong after only a month of training. The gang member stops wasting time talking, fires an arrow into the night, and says he is sure Otho will be afraid someday but not now, while Ilias parries every attack with his sword, then clasps it with both hands and says it is getting boring. Determined, Ilias says she'll finish the killer quickly. He only has time to realize it's bad. The next moment the knight is behind him. An ornate streak of impact stretches from the knight. Cut in half, the killer falls dead. Ilias triumphantly declares that even though he blinded her, she still feels his presence. Another attacker, trying to make sense of the situation, says she was just fooling around earlier. Ilias tells him she was only testing his strength and that they are all weaker than Dakala. The killer replies that this was to be expected. The man had been exceptional, but proved a jerk by betraying his country. Analyzing further, the killer sees the case as bad and unlikely to be won. First, they must distract her while they deal with the others. The man is the primary murder target, then Lacroix, while the one with ears is less important. Another thought occurs to him, and seeing Ulf tired and distracted, he realizes she can be taken hostage and says he believes he has no other choice, then falls silent and pulls something from his bosom. Concluding it is about more than technique, he draws his dagger fully and attacks Ilias. She holds her sword out, but it is a feint. Ilias's sword deflects the dagger, and a smoke bomb explodes behind her. Holding his breath, the knight shouts to everyone that this is a smokescreen. The killer wastes no time, slips past her, and approaches Alpha with the book. Grabbing the book, the mercenary gloats that they were stupid to leave it, but before he can enjoy himself, a blow from above hits his arm. A sudden, powerful blow hits his head, throws the killer's hand high into the air and gives him no chance. And while he covers an open wound, he spots a spear planted in the ground behind him and is shocked by the discovery. The mercenary quickly scans the area, trying to figure out where it came from. After a moment, something on the roof of the building in front of him catches his eye. Indeed, Grandfather Cargo is standing on it. The killer sees things have gone very badly, so he turns and shouts to a subordinate to come help him. Before he can finish telling who needs help, he finds his body being cut in half by Salvat Ragudo himself, who looks terrifying. The assassin's leader pulls a spear from the ground and starts speaking, naming those present as the god of the spear and the strongest knight thighs. Turning to the hero with a wild grin, he asks whether he did it, then slowly rises with his hands in his pockets and says this is a very effective way to handle people like him. The leader must admit defeat because if everyone had arrived at the start, they would not have tried to join the fight. The hero threatens that he delayed them on purpose so they would still believe they had a chance. The hero explains his clever plan to the enemy, where Ilias was lured away by a sound made to open a passage, while Lacroix stayed to defend and could not act. Only Ulfa seemed harmless to him, so he said it was like having a clear path ahead and choosing to walk along it. The leader of the assassins is amazed by how much the hero wants them dead. The hero replies that they killed the tramp, and this is retribution. His face is a mask of cold, dark anger. Shivering, the gang leader asks if the hero is serious, and if it's really just because of this, while the hero replies confidently that they will all die because of it, and then asks who killed him. The killer replies it was a man who shamefully lost to a she-wolf at the very beginning, and asks what he should tell him. The hero refuses to be provoked, and says he knows the leader faked his death. The man's gaze darkens further, and the killer begins to tremble more in his presence. The leader nervously notices the hero's terrible eyes and wonders whether he is on the right side, and the hero says, to be clear, that he has never killed anyone, not once. Instead of asking, the killer claims he has people who will help him kill, and the leader immediately throws another smoke bomb, steps back, and shouts that it's even worse. Ilya says she seems about to let him escape, but she swings her sword and the killer spits blood. He still gets away and finally says losing his arm made him feel better, so thank them for that. Regudo pulls the sound thoughtfully and says he has escaped. No one moves. Lacra suddenly jumps up with a loud cry of surprise. She shouts that the book is ruined because he took it and asks what they should do next, then shakes the unlucky hero for an answer, and he replies that it is a terrible nuisance. She suddenly freezes, stares piercingly at the hero and declares he is lying, then asks if that is true, but the hero is not upset at being found out and instead answers with an evil look, and she is surprised that she sees through his lie. Meanwhile, the killer recalls the run when he had a book but they couldn't kill anyone, lands on a deserted street, bandages his wound with his cloak, and tells himself there will be a next time so he must retreat. A dagger glitters in his right hand as he moves to the wall and swings to strike, but something on the wall suddenly sparkles and resonates with the book, sending powerful vibrations outward, and the killer is stunned and trying to figure out what is happening. He realizes this is Lacra's barrier. Lacra warned that if the book's magic touches the barrier's power it will resonate, letting her sense it from far away. The killer stays calm, thinks she already knows he's here, but it's not a problem because he'll climb the wall and be gone before they arrive, so he starts climbing. With a dagger in one hand, he climbs the sheer wall but finds it too heavy to hold with one hand. He says he is surprised Dachala can, then stops speaking, feels something, and abruptly turns back. The blow strikes the jaw again, this time so powerful it smashes through the wall and sends the mercenary through it, and slowly the protagonist approaches the hole in the wall, noting the cannon-like damage and knowing it is Ilias. As soon as the book began to resonate with the barrier, he told Ilias to throw a projectile at that spot with all his strength. The hero was surprised when Marito agreed to the plan because he had no patience. He remembers the laughing, patient king. At first the hero assumed Grandpa Kara could handle it because of his sniper accuracy, but when the hero asked Grandpa Kara if he could get from here to the castle walls, Grandpa Kara said it would not be easy. Someone touched the hero's shoulder. Ilias stood behind him and said she could finish it, so he should not worry and leave the matter to her. The hero notes that, as you would expect from a gorilla with a muscular brain, he then spots something in the wreckage. Seeing the murderer's corpse, the hero notes how terrible his death is, but believes it was expected after such a powerful blow. She takes out the book, rejoicing that Sir Regudo applied tempering magic, and she is unharmed. A small ball appears ahead, and the hero moves closer to identify it. After a while inside the castle, the crowd nervously calls for the candidate herself. Seated in an armchair facing Marito, the hero looks at the book, and the ball he found lying on the table between them as Lekra presses him to explain the situation. He asks her to wait, opening one eye slightly, since they will soon find out everything themselves. Everyone present looks expectant, while Ulfa sleeps peacefully outside the door. The ball starts to glow with magic. A voice comes from it, ordering Haid, the defeated assassin, to report. From the far side of the sphere, the hero explains what it means that the killer's name is Haid and chuckles. The mysterious man flinches at the sound of someone else's voice, then forces a smile and asks who he is talking to. The hero answers with an evil smile that he is the man he ordered them to kill and says he is glad to meet him. The man in church clothes says he understood, so hatred failed, and the hero waiting for his message shows the hero needs something from him. Lacra begins to speak, but Regudo cuts her off with a wave and a shake of his head. Meanwhile, the hero tells the man he wanted to take the chance to talk to him. The customer says he told the killers to bring the man's head, since information can be taken from him, even after death. The man puts his hand on the sphere. The hero complains this is about a bad hobby, then says he understands and gets straight to the point, asking what the other wants to know first, how to address him, and what his name is, while the other pauses thoughtfully before saying the hero can call him Lahate. Nodding toward Lacra, the hero sees her shake her head to say she did not hear his name, and he tells Lahit he is glad to meet him and invites him to ask any questions. Lahit mockingly says it is also simple, then asks whether the hero has any more questions and pauses in an intriguing way. He ends by revealing his true identity, and the hero mockingly says he has no personality beyond the demon lord's lapdog, yet Lahit keeps smiling, freezes for a moment, then asks how the hero reached that conclusion. Revealing his cards, the hero says he has deciphered the book and that it was simple. Lahit mocks him, calls it very interesting and asks what was in the book, but the hero cuts him off to avoid pretending to be a fool. He insists Lahit already knows the book's contents, so he tried to kill the hero who said he could decipher it. Lahit denies it and says he acted on a whim. Ilias, Lacra, and Marito look disgusted, horrified, and skeptical. Ignoring Lahit's words, the hero keeps probing, asking if he would be in trouble if his link to the demon lord was revealed, and whether Lahit planned to become a demon later with the lord's help. Awkwardly, he starts by asking what the other is, but the hero cuts him off, saying the asker is losing confidence in his words and should show more self-control. Everyone falls silent and freezes in place. The hero says it doesn't matter, and he will answer the question anyway, explaining that the book contains records of watching the blue demon lord after his exile. Someone who had once been human used resurrection magic to bring a man back to life as a blue demon lord, and then recorded everything that happened to him. The book also contains detailed data analyzing a person's abilities, talents, and lifestyle. In short, from the start the author contacted them to turn them into demon lords. That author was involved in those deaths and also gave them strength, and all demon lords received the same abilities, including a way to create a demon world as their territory and a way to turn people into demons. Every overlord received a unique ability. It was called a book on necromancy. The Blue Demon King ruled the undead. The author shared his knowledge with the demons, which unleashed chaos and the worst events in history. Winzing says it seems the hero really did decipher the book, and Lahit, as he suspected, asks whether the hero is an Earthman. The hero agrees the other is right, but says Lahit clearly isn't from there, which is a pity. Lahit asks why he is so sure. The hero replies that Lahit's distorted pronunciation shows he only heard about it, and Lahit does not deny it. The hero considers explaining why he called Lahit a lapdog, saying he believed the Lord's powers were written in the book and meant to stay private, but he changed his mind when Lahit tried to steal it. Lahit, walking thoughtfully around the room, asks if the hero knows the Yuguro church also tried to return the book, and the hero replies that it feels like he should be talking, since he hasn't even told the priest what's in the book. Lahit smiles and asks why. As the hero suspects, the priest does not know its contents. The hero exhales wearily, then explains grimly that the dead demon lords will be resurrected, and adds that if he had known about it, the Yuguro church would have handled the matter differently. Lahit noted that, as he suspected, the book said the same thing and drew his own conclusion with a slight smile. However, one thing puzzled him. Even if he worked for the demon lord, there should be no sign of that. In response, the hero asked whether he had taken Dokla in his hands. Lahit, smiling haughtily, fell silent. The hero traces his train of thought. It all began with Dokla, a half-breed murderer. It reveals why Dokla betrayed his country and stole the book. It also reveals why he entrusted the book to an Earthman he had just met. Following the logical chain, the hero answers his questions, but knowing the introducer of the forbidden resurrection magic was an Earthling who could not read the book, he had to determine how that person learned about it. The hero says he heard this from Lahit while Dachala was still a murderer, and later he discovered a man working behind the scenes who controlled Archbishop Yuke, so the country he trusted had become corrupt. Dokla stole the book to use in negotiations, but it proved more than he could handle, and at this point he could only trust the people he could control. A man from Earth appeared, so Dokula entrusted him with the book as he lay dying, believing the man could identify who was behind the crystal ball and holding high hopes. Lahit nodded thoughtfully and agreed with the hero, saying Dokala was an exceptional person whom no one would have expected the hero to notice. The hero clarifies that it was more convenient for Lahitu and reveals Lahitu's intentions, saying he was hiding in the Yuguro church, struggled to get the book, and so asked Dokla to get it for him. It was risky, but it was his only chance to solve one of his tasks more easily. Lahit notes that Earthlings are full of intelligent people. The hero interrupts, saying the other seems to mean some of it, and probably thinks the hero is an idiot who talks too much, while Lahit pretends to ask whether he said it himself. Lahit realizes information is a weapon, while the hero proudly tells the other person everything he knows, which is foolish. He goes silent. He says he prefers safety over living rationally, turns to Lahit to say that if he lived wisely, he would become like Lahit, and adds that he has seen many who use people for profit, but will not become like them. Lahade also says this is quite rude on the hero's part and asks whether his conscience will torture him if he does something like that. The hero replies that he is still weak. All he wants is to live in peace, in body and mind. There is the sound of a door breaking behind Lahade. The hero finishes by saying people like him will interfere with this. Crackling at the door grows louder, and soon strangers will force their way in. At last, the magic overwhelms the door, and a stout man in a casque bursts in, tearing it to shreds. At the same time, the hero says he informed Yukaro's priest through Archbishop Maya, because the person who recklessly speaks during this tense time is the mastermind, and that person is Lihi. Priests stand on the threshold led by a senior priest, and he shouts angrily that Lihi plotted against them and calls him a rat. The archbishop and the servant of the Lord stood facing each other, studying their opponent. Yuk was angry, while Lahi kept his arrogant calm and says to Yuk-sama that from his expression the hypnosis has worked. Lahitu tries to hypnotize the archbishop, but it fails and Uki grows angrier, shouting that such brazen magic does not work on him. Lahitu realizes he has strengthened his mind's resistance. The old man had put countermeasures in place against the hypnosis. The archbishop signals the other priests to form a perimeter and tells Lahite he has nowhere to run and must surrender. Lahido says he's interested, then starts to reproduce the spell with his hand. 5 small runes immediately appear around Yuk, and Lahido says he was mistaken about that part. Sharp spikes erupt from the runes and strike the spot where Yuka stood a moment earlier. The archbishop dodges at the last moment. While the man recovers, Lehai too finds himself at the door because he had helped him, and Lehai too says goodbye to him. Yuk replies that you should not underestimate him. Yuk uses magic to pin the fugitive to the ground. Lahidi wonders if gravity is magic. Lahidi looks up and sees a magic circle above him. He concludes the priest used a circle above him. Lahite says the priest can create such powerful gravitational pressure. That makes the priest impressive despite being called the weakest archbishop. Uki admits Lahaitu is right and says he is weaker and less accomplished than other archbishops. The fugitive listens closely as the priest says that, despite everything, he remains an archbishop, and determination comes through in his voice. Still holding the gravity spell, he tells Lahite it's over, then gathers the strength to lift a finger and cast it again, insisting he wouldn't say that. A circle of runes appears above the archbishop again and cancels his spell. Sharp spikes shoot out of it a moment later, and the fugitive gets up and moves toward the door. He backs away to avoid the attack, and Lahitu says it was pretty close by just a bit. Then he smells something and staggers as the priest says again that it's over. Grabbing his head, Lahido realizes it is sleepy incense, and they are lying next to the stairs, so he knows he must create a barrier urgently, but when he raises his hand nothing happens. Confused, he asks himself whether he has not been activated. Luca repeats that it's over and says not to make him repeat it 3 times. The priest ends the fight by casting a spell that traps Lahida in a magic cube. Still, while Ahate stares at the sleepy incense, a small sphere falls from his clothes. Picking it up, he holds it at eye level and says everything is clear to him, a calm smile returning to his face. With a grim smile, he tells Yuka the sealing stone kept him from using magic. Lahite tosses the stone aside and admits he was careless. The man says the priest never had a chance to drop him off and adds that barriers should only be formed around their creators. He went on to say that not only had he used 2 barriers, he had moved the second to lure Lahate inside with the sleeping incense, and that this was expected of the archbishop. Even the demon lord's servant knows his magic is sealed by a stone, so he cannot break the barrier. Sleep-inducing incense also makes his body heavy. Accepting the situation, he draws a dagger and assumes it's checkmate. Yuka says such a small dagger won't help, but he insists he can still do something for them. Lahite says that until they get information from him, it will still be considered his victory. Luca suddenly realizes what the enemy plans, but he can no longer stop it. Lahite, wearing a creepy grin, presses a dagger to his neck, declares he has outplayed them all, then says his goodbyes. A moment later, he slits his throat and looks triumphantly at the sphere he used to communicate with the hero. Then his body collapses to the floor and goes rigid, and the hero on the other side realizes the fight is lost. Later, the Meijis reported that Lahite committed suicide when he realized he could not escape, and they sealed his body tightly to prevent a third party from taking it. The hero was surprised that Archbishop Yuka had cornered Lahite so completely that he took his own life. Lakra says it is not surprising, since Archbishop Yuka was her teacher. The hero concludes her teacher caused her to become like this. That means they did something great. He is sure the Pope of Paro can handle it. Marito also explained about 90% of the book's mystery to Maya because she had been cleared of suspicion. When the Pope of Paro heard this, he went to them. I offered a personal apology for the incident, and as a responsible person, I must take the book back. The hero on the balcony announces the case can be closed, but Morito beside him objects, saying that if his hypothesis is correct, a man or a demon lord must have sent Lahite there. Sighing wearily, the hero understands this perfectly well. He tells the king to discuss it with Popuparo himself and take action. This has made the problem delicate. Morito agrees. Morito hopes to name Popuparo narrator to explain this to the hero, but Popuparo stubbornly refuses, arguing it is the king's duty, and the hero complains they are already too burdened. Morito, lying on the railing, complains that the hero might become king, while the man is lost in thought, knowing nothing is settled and the book's biggest challenge still lies ahead. They still haven't told the others. They'll need to decide how to handle it after they tell Papa Yukaro, because it could upend world history, and the hero thinks it's better to keep it secret. Deciding these days should be peaceful, the hero tells Morito he will leave and thanks him for everything, and Morito, surprised, asks whether this is despite his wanting to see the hero tomorrow. Reluctantly, the hero asks why he needs it, and the king says it will let him tell more about his world. Awkwardly scratching his head, the man asks whether this was a cover for deciphering the book, but Morito says that is what he meant. They seem to be working on different strategies, and the contract will be extended. The hero must agree, knowing his peaceful days have not yet come. Morito stands beside me looking pleased, and when he tells the king not to bring him crazy ideas, the king just laughs and says they are friends. The hero screams helplessly to keep him from coming closer. Later, after the conversation, he slowly approaches the church. Inside, he finds Maya standing over Ulf. The young wolf stares into the air, then notices her master and looks at him with joy. She sits at the table and studies. The hero approaches and says she is always very loyal and that he is proud of her. She answers in the same tone, saying Ulf is amazing. Maya grabs the hero's shoulder and with an irritated smile says that while someone else is always scheming with his majesty, the hero awkwardly apologizes. Trying to say he wants to apologize this time, he is cut off when Maya shows him that even Ilias tried to deceive her and tells him to stop being a bad influence on my daughter's best friend. Finally, she exhales and says she can give him a passing grade for coming here and apologizing, and that she knows he had a good influence on Ilias, but the hero doesn't understand what she means. Maya says she's become mentally stronger recently. Having lived in her father's shadow until now, this is a welcome change. Turning to the hero, Maya says Ilias is her daughter's best friend, and she wants to keep an eye on her good and proper growth. She finishes her tirade and asks everyone to wait while she makes tea. The hero frowns to the side. Ulfe sits beside me, writing eagerly, then moves to sit beside her and says he needs to tell her something. First he said he wanted to apologize and then apologize to her. Ulfe stared at him, but the young wolf did not understand why, and asked the master if she had done something wrong, and the hero said he had used her as bait at night. He said he used Ulfe, who looked the weakest, as bait to draw out the killers. At that time it was by far the most effective method. Admitting there were other methods, he says he used Ulfa as bait and that he is no different from the black wolf tribe that tormented her, leaving Ulfa shocked. The wolf flies up to the master and tugs his sleeve, saying he is wrong because he was angry. The hero looks at her in confusion, and the wolf adds that when he saved her, he had been angry because of the wolf. The hero starts to understand what the young wolf is trying to say, and she replies that this is Ulfa's most precious treasure, adding that if the master becomes angry on behalf of others, Ulfa wants to help them alongside the hero. Sunlight streams through the church's stained glass windows as the hero freezes. Ulfe keeps her hand on his sleeve and watches him in silence. He says he understands and pats her head. She says that since the master apologized, Ulfe will forgive him. The hero thanks her. He knows she has grown into a beautiful, strong young woman, not someone whose feelings are easily swayed. Trapped in his own thoughts, the hero keeps thinking this is why Ilias has been scolding him for so long, and he knows he didn't even hesitate to use Ulf. The hero tells Ulfa he's thinking of growing something at their house and asks if she wants to help him. Ulfa wags his tail happily and says he wants to try. The hero realizes that despite his fragile mind, he is treacherous. He's thinking of finding Gazin's book to see what crops he wanted to grow. Meanwhile, Ulfes says he does not like vegetables, and the hero replies that once he grows up he will love them. He decides that when the vegetables are ready, he will put them on his grave, though he would prefer sake. Smiling confidently, the hero tells Ulfa he has bad news. Ulfa cringes and her heart races, and after a short pause he says Lekro will come to them. Ulf repeats the master's words to herself, but still doesn't understand why this is sad news. A few hours earlier, the hero had been sitting in the city square, enjoying the sun and the peace and quiet. He noticed how nice the weather was. After such a restless spell, the hero welcomed the chance to relax like this. This block was badly damaged, mostly by Ilias when the assassins came, but now it is completely restored as if nothing had happened, and the magic is truly remarkable. The hero focuses on her. In a single night, the castle wall Ilias had destroyed was rebuilt. Clearly, Ragudo's team worked through the night to repair everything. She admires magic. Relaxing and enjoying the magic, the hero doesn't notice Lacra crying by his bench, and lost in thought he doesn't hear her and wants to learn magic, even a simple spell, wondering if training can help. Locker starts crying and making distressed faces. At last the hero notices her, but he quickly rises from the bench to go to lunch, and Lekro grabs his sleeve and asks him not to ignore her. Desperate, the hero asks Lockrid to let him go because he wants to stay in a good mood today. Lockrid does not pull away and tells him to help her. Still crying, she explains that she was kicked out of the Mayasama church. The hero replies innocently that she was finally exiled, pats her comfortingly on the shoulder, and says he regrets her loss, but Lekres says she wasn't exiled. Believing she tried to help them, the hero actually ruined everything and they told her to leave or something like that. She then hits the bullseye. The hero concludes she is useless. She had been told to stay at Maya's church until Yukaro arrived, but made a mess and was kicked out. Maya said they were busy preparing for the harvest festival and did not want any extra hassle. Apparently the barriers she set up during the inspection slowed things down. Other priests can do it 10 times faster. The hero knew she would be driven off eventually, but he did not expect it to happen so quickly. Now Lekro clings to the hero's shoulder and asks him for help, but he coldly says he lacks the skill to cure her uselessness and tells her to let go of her clothes. Lekro lets him go but keeps following. She awkwardly mumbles that it's not that important and then asks if she can stay with him. He stubbornly refuses, and Lekro gives a pitiful why. With a shrug, the hero says he lives in the house of Ilias, so he can't let a freeloader in on his own authority. Lacrai is briefly surprised. The next moment heart dances in her eyes. She forces a smile and points out that a young man and a girl share the same roof. Then the hero's voice cuts in to remind her she forgot about Ulf. But Lekro has already found a way out of this situation. She clears her throat and says it is not safe and that any mistake would need her supervision. The hero reassures her not to worry, since the only possible mistake is murder from an improper force adjustment, and Lacra mumbles at first that it might be, but then changes her answer to no. She rightly protests that she must protect them both from his ulterior motives. The hero objects that she has ulterior motives too and tells her to give up and sleep outside. Lacras says it is cruel. Lekra asks the hero for more help, saying she no longer wants to sleep under the bench, points to the straw beneath the spot where he had been sitting, and he realizes she really slept there. Lekra leaves her complaints unfinished, crying that she feels lonely and frightened here. The hero realizes he cannot get away and notes her stubbornness. They find Ilias eating a kebab. After hearing them, she says she doesn't mind. The hero looks shocked by the unexpected agreement while Lekro glows with happiness. The hero moves close to Ilias, demanding to know why she did that and saying she should have refused her. Lacra runs around the square, pleased by the news. Ilias does not understand what she did wrong. She replies firmly to the hero that, as a noble knight, she cannot leave a woman sleeping under the cold sky. The hero asks whether she is just acting cool. The hero tells them to stay calm, says they only have 3 bedrooms, that he would feel bad if she had to share a room with her, and that as a man he cannot sleep in the same room with her, so Ilias offers Alpha a room. The hero does not lose hope. He calls her a fool and says so. Suddenly her uselessness begins to affect Ulf. Meanwhile, Lacra wonders whether the hero is too cruel. The hero gets Ilias to take these matters seriously. She agrees he's right, and Lacryad notes that even Iliasan does. Ilias says Lacro will sleep in the attic. The hero says he understands, thanks her, and begins to take everything away, but Ilias stops him and reveals she was joking. Ilias says the pantry has plenty of room but needs cleaning. The hero isn't happy with that and says it's too early to decide. Ulfa should ask about it too. Returning to the conversation between the hero and Ulfa a few hours later, Ulfi replies that everything is fine and that she likes Lacra, then hugs Ulfa warmly and calls her a good girl, while the hero behind them realizes he is completely defeated. The hero takes control, ties a handkerchief on his head, and reluctantly says they need to clean everything quickly, asks Ulta to help. Lekro tries to offer what she can, but the hero answers her, not daring to do more. In the pantry, the hero and Ulfa start sorting. Ulfa pulls out an old chest of drawers, and the hero shows her where to put it. Lacra watches from around the corner and decides she can also help, so while they are distracted, she walks down the stairs carrying a box of things. Stumbling, she falls with the box as everyone from the hero's group tries to catch her, and after cleaning, Lekro relaxes in a wooden bathtub, while a spider begins to hang from the ceiling behind her. Lacra spots him and makes a fuss. The hero and Ulf, standing outside the door, prick up their ears when she screams. Lacra cries that she saw Spider, the candidate she hates. Both people in the next room freeze and turn toward the door where the sound came from. The hero asks Ulfi to say he did nothing. Ulfi says it's fine because her master has a perfect alibi. He can't tell where she learned that word. Lacra jumps out of the bathroom with a duplicate who points accusingly at the hero and shouts. The three of them begin cleaning the room. Lacra notices a bucket of water in the center and plans to take revenge on the hero. Picking it up, she walks toward the man, who notices and tells her to stop. The next moment, Lacra falls, tipping the bucket over onto herself and Ulfa. The hero freezes, unable to stop her. After the incident, the girls relax together in the bath as evening falls and Ilias returns home, calling out that she's back, and the three greet her cheerfully since they have already bathed and changed. The hero notices the third freeloader quickly joined them. Ulf rushes happily to the newcomer and Ilias confirms she is at home. Then she notices she had no idea there were so many. A mountain of items taken from the storeroom stood before them. Ilias says she kept stuffing things into the pantry. All of it relates to Rachel's family. The hero notices the items are very high quality and says they must be important to Ilias. She smiles and agrees, then draws a sword and twirls it in her hand. Ilias draws the sword from its scabbard and makes a small swing, and she says he brings back memories for her because the late king gave the sword to her father. If he remembers correctly, the hero says her father was a knight of Thea's and her mother was a priest like Maya. Ilias confirms he is right. They were both good parents she respects. He set the sword down with a clink. The hero suggests she throw away their memorabilia, but Ilias says she needs to sort them, and it makes no sense to keep so many, so she's planning to donate them to Maya's church and Rigudo's team. Opening a drawer, she finds 2 sets of clothes, and Ilias says one is his size. The hero could become a decent man like her father if he dressed her up, but he skeptically notes that clothes with effects are cursed. Ilias smiles happily and says they should continue tomorrow and go to bed early tonight. She says she has a message from His Majesty, who wants to see the hero at the castle tomorrow morning, and the hero asks again whether Marito said that and wonders what the king wants from him, while La Crocra says she is hungry. Ulf rushes into the kitchen saying she will bring the food, and the hero taps Lacra on the head and says she will help too. Ilias goes up to the second floor, Lacra wipes the table, and Ulf sets the food out. Then 4 people sit at a table piled with food, and this is how another freeloader joined their house. After dinner, everyone goes to bed. Lacra falls asleep holding Alfin in her arms. The next day at the palace, Ilias and the hero walk down the corridor to see Marito. In his office, Marito tells Ilias that from that day on, she is assigned the task of protecting an important person. Ilias feels flattered and cannot believe she was chosen. Casually, the hero notes that Father of Pero has already arrived today. Marito says no, explaining if Pero's father will come with many people and will probably be late. The hero, puzzled, asks who this important person is. Marito calmly says he is standing in front of the hero, then points his finger at him to confirm. Marito claims he is a hero. Startled, the hero opens his eyes and asks for an explanation. Marito replies that the hero lacks self-awareness and that speaking the language of the earth makes him important. The king says wryly that if this is discovered, there will be more like Lahitu who will come after him, and Marito raises an eyebrow, doubting the hero can defend himself, while the hero thinks the king's judgment makes some sense and then speaks aloud. The hero asks skeptically whether Ilias will be his bodyguard. Ilias snaps that there is no problem with that. Marto says if someone else is suggested, let them speak, but he refuses to give up surrogato. This does not surprise the hero. Sweat beads on the hero's brow as he realizes Ilias could be perfect for this, but it's Ilias. Marito begins to understand, and with a sly smile, asks the hero if he doesn't want it to be a woman. Ilias freezes in place, silent. The hero yells in his head that the king only provoked Ilias and wonders if it was intentional as she trembles with anger. Then he exhales wearily and says it was not, which makes Ilias brighten, and he adds he'd rather it be a woman, but Ilias lacks charm. He thinks Ilias is perfect for the job regardless of her gender, but her compatibility with him feels a bit off when the hero stops talking and the king takes over, and Marito then ironically asks who he thinks he is most compatible with. Squinting thoughtfully, the hero replies that if judged among all the knights, Grandfather Kara would come out on top, and Ilias bristles at those words. Later, Ilias and Grandfather Kara clashed at the training ground over several nights, facing each other with spears and armor as anger burned in Illyria's eyes. Ilias grips his sword tighter to hold back his anger and tells the opponent they will fight now, while she urges Grandpa Kara not to hold back and to fight as if his life depends on it, and Grandpa Kara looks unhappy that it has come to this. Grandfather Kara trembles at Ilias's dark aura and calls to the hero, asking what happened because Princess Ilias appears to want to kill him, and the hero explains that Ilias was actually ordered by His Majesty to guard him, which he believes. Grandfather Kara doubts that is the reason and asks whether they talked about something else. The hero reflects on his words and remembers calling Kara's name when the choice was offered, which fits since Kara is his friend. Marito considers the hero's reply and says Mr. Domter Kafkan might indeed be suitable. Marito objects, saying the escort position is already taken for him and it will be difficult to place him there. He asks sympathetically if the young knight should take his spot, but the hero says that is not necessary because that would make the conversation with Ilias brief. Marito replies, so it is decided. He orders Mrs. Rachel to protect the hero. Outraged, she obediently replies that she understood the order. After hearing the hero's story, Grandfather Kara replies that he understood everything, looks accusingly, and steps aside. Hugging the hero, he says security is an honorable job and that he would feel uncomfortable if told someone else was more suitable, and the hero, shocked, asks whether that is true. Grandpa Kara is already walking away, wailing that this is terrible. The hero apologizes awkwardly. The chorus grandfather only tells him to rely on him because he sees it as an honor. For the first time, the hero watches a duel between Grandpa Kara and Ilias. Ilias is as powerful as a group of gorillas, and Grandpa Kara matches her. Even Ulfe, who has made great strides in training, still cannot land a single blow on Grandpa and is now supporting Ilias. Startled, the hero sees her and cannot tell what she is doing here. Ulfa shouts at Ilias to place Grandpa on his shoulder blades. They wonder how she knows those words. Believing she still sulks over their first meeting and now thinks poorly of him, the hero apologizes to his grandfather again. As the duel begins, Kara's grandfather drops his casual expression and prepares to strike, fixing his gaze on Ilias before charging and swinging his spear in a wide arc. He speeds up and makes several quick attacks, but Ilias fends them off. The hero shouts that Grandpa can do it and is not slower than Ilias. She notices the hero's words, their force cutting through his gaze, then abruptly grabs the tip of the opponent's spear. The hero freezes and Ilias feigns surprise. Claiming she understood what speed means, she gives a mocking grin as Kara's grandfather tries and fails to pull the spear from her hands, so she lifts it with her spear hand and leaves him dangling defenselessly. Then she lets go and he waits unhappily for a trick. Ilias hits the opponent hard in the stomach, sending him flying several meters. The hero shouts loudly. The opponent plants his spear in the ground to slow Ilias' attack, but as he tries to figure out what is happening, before he can get really angry, his expression goes blank. Ilias, furious, rushes forward and attacks the old man head-on. The old man tries to block with a pained expression, but the blow is so strong he falls to his knees, and Ilias sheathes his sword and offers formal thanks, ending the duel. Anxious, the hero calls Grandfather Kara, who suddenly says, "Lower back, I'm dying, goodbye," and collapses as the hero shouts his name, while the knights carry their grandfather away on a stretcher, and Ulfe runs up to Ilias to admiringly tell her she is strong. The hero shrugs and says Ilias should have thought of Grandpa, and she turns to him indignantly, asking what he means as Ilias replies seriously that Grandpa Kara is a very experienced warrior and she could not fight half-heartedly. The hero objects, saying she can keep up with the old man and treat the duel as practice, and Ilias hesitates and blushes, but stubbornly says it's hard to tell who is stronger while the hero watches her closely. He seriously asks whether she cares about the hero's claim that Grandpa Kara is a better fit, and explains he meant it's easier to build strategies with him. The hero says she knows he prefers to come up with plans rather than fight personally. Grandpa Kara clearly knows his role and is steady. When the time comes, it will play a major role. Ilias asks indignantly about her, and the hero says she is too strong, so the battle becomes easier once she joins. Mortified, Ilias admits this is how he sees her, then turns and tells her she can be relied on without a doubt, and that he would not mind if the case seemed only about protection. The hero goes on, saying that, returning to that topic, he just wants someone to talk to, and he asks whether she would be happy if she used a trump card like hers. When Ilias tries to answer, the hero interrupts her by placing his hand on her head and says you can rely on her 100%, and in this situation it feels to him like he is being pampered a lot. He tells her he doesn't want her to feel worthless and admits his guilt, apologizing for making her feel bad and saying he was wrong. Ilias touched the spot where his hand had been a moment earlier. In that case, she said she should also apologize to Kara's grandfather. After saying that, Ilias quickly runs away, leaving the hero with Ulfa. The hero scolds her, asking whether her recent words were acceptable, and she replies flippantly that Grandpa deserved it. Weary, the hero asks when she will reconcile with him, and Malfade cheerfully says he will think about it, while Ilias enters Grandfather Kara's room, where Kara lies propped up on the bed with a magic stone on his lower back that heals him. Looking guilty, Ilias admits she acted out of resentment and apologizes to her grandfather, who laughs and says it sounds like she talked to the boy and tells her not to worry because he understands everything. Removing the towel that hid the magic stone, he keeps talking. In the end, he loses. He looks attentively at the girl and asks if she really wants to take his place now, but he only replies that he does not dare. Grandpa Kara tells her he likes how she goes out of her way to get the boy to notice her, but she seems unaware of why she does it. Ilyas still does not understand why he's going out of his way. Confused, she asks if Grandpa knows. He answers yes, and before she finishes, he says it is love and nothing else. Ilyas does not like his answer. A dark aura surrounds her, and Ilyas draws a sword, saying that if she breaks his lower back completely now it will stop hurting. Grandpa Kara says he was only joking. Trembling, he pleads with her that he has a wife and children, and that she knows what love means, but she feels something else. Ilyas asks menacingly what that is. The grandfather says it's respect, or something close to it, and explains it's not the kind of respect a knight has, but the respect you have for someone who can do what you can't. Grandpa says the boy doesn't live like them, and if needed he will try to understand the villain's heart. Ready to follow this path, his heart is unlike a knight's. He says her spirit is most chivalrous, and she neither wants another path nor to follow a boy's path. She respects him for being willing to follow any path he chooses. Ilyas clenches his fist and asks the old man to speak more plainly. Grandfather Kara asks whether Ilyas, following the knight's path, could turn to evil, and she snaps that of course he could not, while Grandpa, chuckling at her fervor, says that's it. The boy understands knights and other people and can do things others cannot. Because he can do what she cannot, she wants him to acknowledge her. After the old man explained, Ilya's face brightened. Ilya says she accepts the answer, admitting she is not yet mature. Grandpa says this is true and asks her not to be biased because she wants the boy to appreciate her. She asks if he agrees too. He explains it is not limited to one boy. Praise from His Highness would mean a great deal to her. Being recognized by someone who can do what you can't is a real joy. At first, Ilyas is surprised by his words, but a knowing smile spreads across her face, and she thanks him because she is beginning to understand a lot, and then she leaves, slamming the door behind her while the smile slowly freezes on Grandpa Kara's face. Returning to bed, he complains about the hero he backed on that battlefield. The man is not good at imitating others. He almost died because of him. Night falls. Ilyas describes her grandfather's condition. The hero, twirling the liquid in his glass, says it was to be expected from Grandfather Kara. Ilyas admits she is very embarrassed, but the hero tells her not to worry because he should be ashamed. Ilyas says that in any case from tomorrow she will protect him, and he can rely on her. Ulf and Lacroix are already sleeping peacefully while the others talk, and the hero is counting on Ilyas, who asks him what kind of stick he brought is on the table, and he is glad she asked. Pretending to be important, the hero replies that he found this stick in the forest and fixed it up, and that this is his second partner because the first went for firewood. Ilyas is not moved by his speech. She says she can break it in one blow and that he can take their weapons if necessary, but the hero tells her he cannot lift such a weight. He says this stick will do and made it so he would not forget what matters. No matter how strong the allies are, he can fight only with it. Do not rely too much on the people around him. Fight so he can be proud of himself. Ilyas understood his intentions and said nothing could be done then. She told the hero not to hesitate to speak if he needed anything, and as he left the table he replied that one garment would be enough. Too many items will make moving difficult, and when Ilyas asks if the hero is going to leave, the hero replies that it's definitely not now. For now the hero keeps thinking, if he no longer needs to live here, he could try moving to another country. Ilyas covers one hand with the other, and her voice trembling, asks if he is not satisfied with the thighs, and the hero replies that on the contrary he could not be more pleased with such a favorable environment, and Ilyas asks why as she clasps her hands. Unaware of anything, the hero says he wants to find a way back to his world, that he likes this life, and that he wants to care for Ulf and fully thank Ilyas. The hero admits he doesn't know what the future holds, and the comforts of the old world may not be enough for him to keep living here. For now he searches for every possible way out of the situation. Get used to this world. The hero notes he will not leave, of course. You are leaving everything here responsibly. Ilyas does not need to worry about it. In the end, this leads to serious consequences. He exhales slightly. Ilya's mood shifts, but she keeps smiling and says that if he disappears, Ulfa will be lonely. The hero doesn't notice Ilya's state and answers calmly that it's possible, but Paige just needs time to get to know this world better. Until then, he'll try to give her as many new encounters and sensations as possible. He won't leave Ulf to dubious people. His face beams with pride. Ilyas awkwardly realizes he really is acting like her father. Ilyas asks whether the hero has friends or family there. surprising him and immediately souring his mood. Turning away from Ilias, he called up the stairs that it was personal and that maybe one day, when he was drunk, he would tell her, but until then he asked for forgiveness. After wishing the girl good night, he goes to bed. Ilias still does not let go. She realizes his way of life is completely different from the chivalrous one she believes in. She could not imagine living like this, yet he walked that path without a trace of doubt. Angry, she accused him of choosing evil. Convinced, she saw no way back. Still, he doesn't hesitate to jump between them. After the duel, Kara's grandfather told her the boy respected her, and she should remember that. She runs one way while you go another, and Grandpa says the boy cannot do that. Finally, when it comes to knightly respect, the hero respects Ilias more than grandfather Kara. Ilias warms to the idea that the hero is like her. They are drawn together by what neither can do alone, but Ilias wonders if that is the right way to think. She does not know which path he will choose in the future, but for now he, Ilias, has not finished the sentences in his head. Night follows a new day, and already armored Ilias bursts into the hero's bedroom shouting that it is morning, but the hero shows no sign of waking. So Ilias repeats that it is morning and tells him to get up while the hero whispers an apology and says the sun has only just risen. Silence falls, then the hero jumps up and asks what Ilias is doing here, and she replies joyfully that starting today she will be his guard and stay with him all day from the moment he wakes, but he cuts her off with a sharp shout that he understands and is already getting up. Sleepily he walks to the closet with his things, yawning as he goes, then stops and looks at Ilias beside him, sarcastically asking whether she will change his clothes, and Ilias, her eyes sparkling, says she does not mind. Deciding to do everything himself, the hero throws her out the door and tells her to leave. Then they come down for breakfast, while Ilias stands at the foot of the stairs, staring intently at the hero as a sleepy Ulfa comes down. She joins us for breakfast. The hero invites Ilias to eat with them, but she says she already ate. Overjoyed, Ilias floods the hero with questions about whether he has finished eating, wants to go outside, or would rather do something else. Ulf takes the downcast hero by the sleeve and urges him outside. The three walk away, leaving Laka at home as she sadly watches them go. Ilias follows the hero with a careless smile, enjoying their time together. Later, the hero and Marito walk down the castle corridor. The king laughs because the hero has just explained the situation. Marito says the hero is doing well, and now it is clear where so many people come from. He apologizes awkwardly. Marito says he's not upset. They end up talking about more important things, like the weather forecasts from his world and how different their worlds are, which genuinely interests him. Marito then notices the hero gets along well with La Krazolf of the Yugu Rachurch, and he had heard they lived together. She says she's gradually settling into local life, has found a job she can handle, and will start paying rent. Marito is surprised. The hero notices La Cray has trouble focusing on several things at once, but she excels when she concentrates on a single task, and in battle she focuses on destroying the enemy and does it well. When Maya asked her to embroider a complex pattern, La Croix completed it with astonishing speed, and in tasks like that she is more reliable than most, though her childish ways are hard to change. Marito realizes that despite all the effort they put in with her, she might suspect something, while the hero looks at the king, lays a hand on his shoulder and tells him not to worry, leaving Marito at a loss. Confidently, the hero says Lekro knows nothing and could not drag her to me alone. The king freezes for a moment as he realizes what he said, then exhales and admits he is speechless. The hero grins contentedly. They step into the garden. Bright sunlight briefly blinds the hero. He makes a soft sound of admiration. They see a cozy garden with a gazebo and a fountain. The hero says the garden is lovely. Proudly, Marito says he knows they are heading toward the gazebo because it is his pride. The hero says it looks like Western-style gardens from Earth, though he did not see them often. Marito again boasts about how amazing he is. He asks the hero if there really were none in his country. The hero calmly replies that in Japan, all gardens were built on the principle of wabi-sabi. This aesthetic has deep symbolism that is hard to explain, like a beauty found when flowers are not in bloom, and includes bonsai, small potted trees, with Morito asking whether they can be grown indoors. The hero says he thinks Mana can feed the trees. He gets an idea when he remembers Mana and how beautiful the trees on the ridge of the Demon Lord Killer are. Morito agrees with him. He says that, according to legend, the leaves and tree trunks there glow as if they absorbed the water's magic. Morito Dremley says it sounds great and would like to see them at least once. The hero turns to Ilias and asks if she might be bored. Ilias says no, and Marito asks Lee Rachel if she sometimes spends time admiring flowers. Ilias replies eagerly that she prefers blades and could look at them for hours. The hero and Marito look at her, confused. Marito says the hero shares his taste in color. Marito suddenly asks the hero whether he wants to get married. The hero says it's sudden and then points out that Marito needs it more, and Marito does not deny this and is often told he must find his queen. The hero believes he is a queen. That's how he understands the situation. The man asks about the Marito brothers. The hero replies that his father has 3 wives. He is the only prince and the other children are his younger sisters. The hero sees an upside. There will be no power struggle. Marty agrees and says his younger sisters marry whoever they want and then leave the country to work as adventurers. The hero is surprised. Papa Danette says everyone is worried about Marito, yet they act as if nothing happened to him and are already looking for a bride for him. The king agrees, but still. Marito tells the hero that at those dinners he meets girls in person, but none of them appealed to him. Each time the dinners end with nothing, and it's mentally draining. Marito invites the hero to join him, promising girls more beautiful than any he has seen, and Elias overhears. She is supposed to bring the hero to his highness, but she thinks it's impossible because the hero prefers older women. Marito asks again, startled. The hero turns to Elias and awkwardly tells her not to say such strange things, and Elias reasonably points out that, judging by how he talks to others, that makes her a gorilla, Ulf a father, and Lacra pig, leaving only Maya. The hero looks at her strangely and says he will, of course, speak respectfully to the higher ranks. He does have a preferred type, and older women are definitely not part of it. Elias is genuinely amazed. Facing Elias, he tries to explain that Ulf was in trouble, so he had to take care of her and could not see her any other way, while Lycra is sweet but foolish and does not count, and Elias tries to object. When she asks about herself, the hero replies ruthlessly that she has muscles instead of brains. He does not think she is terrible, so Elias can relax while Marito watches the whole scene cheerfully. The hero continues, saying she does not like being treated like a girl, and that he was careful about it at first, while Elias points out the caution was only at the start and not now. Finally, the hero insists she solves every problem by brute force, though deep down he still sees her as a girl. Marito can't stand it and laughs loudly, while Elias feels embarrassed and stays silent. Marito wipes his tears and says everything is clear and very interesting, while the hero admits he laughed but sees the king's ulterior motives and voices them, saying the king wants them to start a family and remain in Tizen until the end of his years, and Marito does not hide his intentions. Rising from the bench, he says the hero reads him like an open book. Nothing keeps him here, but Marito believes the hero is needed here. Confidently, the king declares that if he wants something, he will get it. The hero stares coldly at the provocation and replies that he was not going to leave yet. Marito notes the words for now, but if he doesn't find a reason to stay, one day he will leave. Sad at the thought of going on those dates alone, he asks the hero, his friend, to go with him at least once. The hero replies that he disagrees. No matter how you look at it, they are not in a worse position than him. Marito thinks it over. That's how the hero and Marito came up with a rule. If one side invites a girl, the other must invite someone too. Marito complains he can't outnumber the hero, but he can still find a suitable girl for him, and it will be a duel where each side must present their best girl. Elias mutters that they are like children. They somehow settled on the rules and agreed not to add any more. As they leave the castle, Elias tells the hero she cannot believe he involved his highness in such strange games. The hero tells her not to say that, calls Marito a strange man, and says he would not be surprised if Marito ordered her to marry someone. Ilya, confused, asks what he is talking about. The hero promises to try to find a decent wife for Marito. She does not need to worry. Ilyas asks the hero what kind of girls he likes. Meanwhile, Marito sits in the garden watching the sunset, remembers something, grins happily, and his guardian is calling him. He places the glass in front of the king and asks whether the king remembers something amusing. Marito adds that when people join a conversation, it often becomes more lively. The king lifts a glass and observes that the hero remains very interesting. Perhaps if he had been a prince instead of a king, they would have communicated more often and been involved in all sorts of intrigues. Staring at his reflection in the glass, the king admits he is worried about how unpredictable he is while still eager for his next move. The guardian says he understands his king. Though weaker than many, his deeds have more impact than the knight's. The thought gives me goosebumps. Marito finds this surprising because he did not expect his servant to be interested in someone like him, given the servant has never shown interest before regardless of a person's strength. The guardian says there's nothing to be done because he sees everyone in this country as weak, and Marito says they should have entrusted the hero's protection to him, since if he had always been there, the king would have been calm. The guardian warns him not to joke like that. If he is not beside the king, he cannot fulfill the contract they made. Marito smiles contentedly and says it is time to get back to business. A few days later, Papev Pero arrives in the capital with his delegation, including Papev Pero Rosario himself, Archbishop Yukakanuk, Captain Messius Yox of the Holy Knights, and the caretaker of Poplares. A horse-drawn cart rolls down a city street. The delegation approaches Tissa Castle. The delegation enters the gate and walks along a deserted corridor to the throne room. Guards are posted everywhere. The priest in the center says he is a priest of Eucaro and begins by apologizing for the mess he caused. Because of their carelessness, Bays suffered great damage, and he apologizes again. Bose and his delegation bows their heads after him. Marito says it wasn't worth worrying. They kept losses to a minimum. Shuddering, the priest blames Archbishop Uki, but Marito insists that's not true and that the events exposed Lahite as the traitor. Pulling a book from his clothes, he says the problem lies in the Blue Demon Lord's diary. First, he hands the book back to them as agreed. He and Lord Ragudo were the ones who read it and confirmed its contents. Marito then looks at the hero, says the hero alone helped them read it, and points at him over his shoulder. One man watches the arrivals carefully. Pop F. Paro gives the hero a shrewd look. Speaking to the hero, the priest says the hero came from another world. The priest asks the others to shake the hero's hand. He wants to know what kind of hero someone really is. The caretaker explains that because of the holy man's magic, a touch lets the hero sense what kind of person stands before him. Meekly agreeing, the hero immediately offers his hand and they shake cautiously, while Pop F. Paro reads the information, notes almost no mana in the hero's body, then falls silent and says he understands. Pop F. Paro concludes the hero is a coward who fears many things. To protect himself, he tries to understand everything around him. This is because, in a place called Earth, you can easily encounter violent people. Wary of the priest, who is no fool and quickly uncovered the truth, the hero replies that this is so. The priest bows to the hero and says that despite everything, thanks to him he found a traitor in his country and is grateful. Papa Danans replies that it is not necessary and that the thanks belong to those who are no longer with them. The priest apologizes for calling him a coward without thinking, and the hero calmly says he is not offended by the truth, then turns to Archbishop Yuke, bows in gratitude, credits the archbishop with a major contribution to Lahikin's case, and the archbishop awkwardly tells him not to thank him. Archbishop Akka admits he was careless and has corrected his mistakes. The caretaker giggles softly behind him and says Mr. Akka was very worried during their journey. He tells Laris not to talk so much. Laris pretends to cover her mouth with her palm and asks for forgiveness. She smiles sweetly, which puts the hero on guard, so he pays attention, approaches her and asks if they have met before, and she replies no, she has come here for the first time and is meeting him for the first time. Gloomily, the hero concludes he should check it out. F. Paro, leafing through the book, says the hero had earlier said he can only tell some parts in person. The hero agrees, but before that he wants to make the same check. The priest agrees but asks if the hero has the same ability. The hero says he has something similar and invites everyone to join now that they are gathered, while Marito smiles contentedly, anticipating something interesting. To test how confident they are, the hero tells him to pop the Upero, asks him to repeat after him, and he begins with the words I am Pop Ev Pero. The man calmly repeats the words the hero dictated, then asks if that is correct, and the hero says yes, that is fine and the same must now be repeated to Archbishop Yuka, while Tom is embarrassed by the hero's attention. He stutters and repeats the hero's words, then Papa Danit instructs him to repeat, I am Archbishop Yuka, and he says it more calmly as he wonders, perplexed, why all this is and what the point is. The hero explains that Archbishop Uki reacted differently than he did the first time someone lied or told the truth, is much more confident when he tells the truth, and says he understands. Turning to the captain of the knights, the hero says it's Yox's turn, then repeats the first phrase, calmly calling the wrong name and doing the same with the second phrase. Next he asks everyone to repeat the third phrase, I am the captain of the Order of Holy Knights, and then repeats it confidently. The hero praises the knight as worth waiting for, barely hesitates, and now it is the lyricist's turn. The hero repeats the first two phrases, and she calmly echoes him. His tone then darkens as he speaks the third sentence, and Laris meets his eyes and calmly repeats that phrase as well. The hero pauses, then gloomily speaks the fourth line, saying she is a Lahite. Everyone in the room immediately goes on alert, ready to attack if anything happens. Lyris stays silent. Everyone assumes fighting positions as tension rises, and a dark aura begins to gather around Larissa, a familiar creepy smile sliding across her face. The hero asks what happened and if she can repeat it, and he says she cannot because Pop F. Pero can detect lies, and Archbishop Yuka can detect when someone is telling the truth. Hiding is pointless now. A brazen grin spreads across his lips under the stunned crowd's gaze. He asks when the hero will notice. He said he wasn't entirely sure, but he couldn't accept that he'd willingly chosen to end his life. Someone like him wouldn't say goodbye to everything so easily. The The hero explains that Lehit learned part of the book's contents, but not all, so he will not risk his life for anything until he learns the rest. The hero says that since that day, he has been extremely careful with people he meets for the first time, and Lehit, disguised as a girl, does not believe he could be recognized for such a weak reason, since the hero did not hesitate to blame him or even call him Lyris. So Lehit wants to know why the hero is so Studying the hero closely, he wonders whether the Lehit will attack, knows it would be better to stay silent, but may still blurt something unnecessary. The hero decides to answer, says he can read how people relate to each other, and watches how far everyone stands while King Marido talks with Pope Eupero. The hero says she alone felt uncomfortable among them. Lehade asks again. She explains Lehade smiled when he teased Archbishop Uku. That is how it turned out. Pop Eupero kept a measured distance, neither warm nor cold. The hero watched his every move. The subordinate was expected to show the right character, but did not. The hero says that someone else would just assume he liked such a cute girl, but for someone as unlucky as him, that is simply impossible. Lehite understood the hero's words. He had been so careless about the chance to see the hero in person that he made a mistake. The hero chose to finish his speech. At the start, the hero had asked if they had met before, and Lehite answered that this was the first time he had seen him. Only someone bent on tricking their conversation partner would answer that way, so he decided to test him, and the hero tells himself he knows those techniques better than anyone because he used them with Maya and Lacra and even felt déjà vu. Pleased by the display of the hero's thoughts, Lehite responded happily as any Earthman would, while Archbishop Oki angrily scolded him and demanded to know what he had done to Lyris, and Lehite said it was clear the body belonged to Lyris. Lehite says that when he cut his neck with a knife, he used magic to separate his soul from his body, allowing it to leave the physical shell. The ritual needs careful preparation and is hard to repeat, so Lapide warns them since he already has the next body ready and sees no reason to harm the current vessel. The hero says this magic is extremely useful to him because it frees him from fear of death, but you need a lot of spirit to simply abandon your body. Father Evpero says the magic of soul movement is forbidden but crossed the line, and Lehate gives a faint smile, saying he would like to talk to them a little more even though it will lead nowhere, then falls silent. Turning to the hero, he says he was very glad to meet him in person. They squint at the hitman. After that, Lehate bows gracefully, says that in that case he will leave them, and adds they will see each other again. Blood gushes from the Lyris's mouth. Her body falls limply onto the carpet, and Archbishop Yuka rushes toward her, calling the girl's name. He opens her mouth and says it looks like he has hidden sharp magic crystals in his mouth, so they need to give her first aid as soon as possible while people start to fuss around.